The hero states that if he destroys it, the Demon King will die, and explains that it is the Demon King's heart. The Demon King says that if anyone is found who can kill him, it won't be a hero, but someone like the man he's talking to, and he's always thought so. He says the hero contributed greatly to the victory, and the current Demon King is weak, and he's sure the man he's talking to knows it. He states that he is honored to be killed by a hero, not to be the hero, and explains that if the hero had such a hard time fighting the Demon King, he wouldn't have stood a chance against him. The tweet bids farewell to the hero, who hides in the shadows. The man confirms that the mission is complete. The tweet says he can't say he feels like the savior of humanity. He was born as a tool to win a war and nothing more, a war that's over, his final mission just completed. He says that's it, he'll be quiet. He's wondering how he should live now. The man suggests not passing by and celebrating the hero's victory, and the girl invites them to look at her merchandise too. The tweet states that this is a royal palace, a meeting room, and says the work is well done, as always. Chris says they haven't seen each other in a while. He asks how things are with the Demon King. Chris replies that everything went smoothly, and a couple of days ago, news of the hero's victory over the Demon King spread around the world. He left headquarters for the first time in a month. She replies that it's not worth mentioning, they've only been communicating via intercom lately. The woman says that despite Tweet defeating the Demon King, Tweet explains that it doesn't matter who defeated him. In this case, it wasn't he who defeated the Demon King, but the organization. The woman says Tweet is as indifferent as ever. Tweet asks Chris about her 15th birthday this year and hands her some documents. She asks what they are. He replies that they are history from her work. The woman explains that their organization's job is to cover for the hero, and explains that in the Fourth Great War between the demon and the hero, the Demon King represents destruction, while the hero represents hope. She explains that, as their names suggest, the Demon King and the hero are destined to clash one day, and in the last 30 years this has happened 3 times. Their clashes are known as the war between the hero and the demon. The tweet says that everything has now ended with the hero's victory, and therefore humanity's victory. He explains that 10 years ago, a new Demon King was born, and a new, 4th generation of heroes emerged in Terra. The girl explains that the country in which a hero appears can rule all other countries. The tweet suggests the so-called hero effect, right? If a hero defeats the Demon King, their country becomes exalted above all others. The girl explains that if the hero loses, Terra's leaders will be concerned that a hero born in their country won't be able to defeat the Demon King, which is the worst possible outcome. She explains that as a result, an organization was created, and the kingdom supports the hero in 2 ways, in the light and from the shadows. The Shadows is a secret group that operates in the strictest secrecy and has no regard for the legality of its actions. The girl explains that for the past 4 years, their organization has been solely dedicated to supporting the hero and has become his surrogate, and explains that Tweet knows the reasons for this better than she does. The tweet reports that 4 years ago, the war became particularly brutal. He explains that then the unexpected happened. The hero couldn't even defeat a common demon. He explains that the hero had fought him countless times and believes that the demon was an enemy he needed to defeat to infiltrate the Demon King's castle. By then, they were already in a panic, reporting that they'd watched the hero bravely go into battle time after time, only to have it end with him being gravely wounded, forcing them to rescue him. The tweet asked if the hero would die if things continued like this, and whether humanity would be wiped out for the first time by defeating the Demon King. The tweet says that one of the organization's members ended the war by killing the Demon King instead of the hero. He reveals that he was the one who killed the Demon King. Chris asks why he doesn't stop beating around the bush and get down to business. The tweet states that Chris placed the order. The girl explains that she takes full responsibility and asks for him to simply win, saying she'd completely forgotten about it. The tweet says it doesn't matter, just as he said. The woman explains that from that moment on, their organization also began participating in the war and fought many demons. Simply put, whatever they did, they attributed all the credit to the hero, thus keeping the secret. The tweet says Chris looks displeased. The woman points out that their contribution to the war is greater than that of knights and heroes combined, and that's natural. Chris explains that officially they are the army's lackeys, and if he continues his demagoguery, those above might think he's a risk factor, liable to die tomorrow. Chris reports that a decision has just been made to disband their organization. Tweet says that since the Demon King was defeated, the special forces have lost their purpose. They have no other purpose than the knights, whose duty it is to preserve peace, and he has been preparing for this moment. He asks what he should do now. The woman explains that now that the organization has been disbanded, the woman says she'll consult with Tweet about his future, asks if he's made any plans for the future, and promises to do everything possible to help him with this. Otherwise, her boss will overload her with work. Tweet says she makes it sound like he can choose his future. He says they're trying to bribe all the members for life so they won't betray them, and agrees that makes sense. The girl explains that it's precisely because of Tweet's great achievements that his bribe will be better than everyone else's. The girl asks Tweet to simply tell her about his future plans, but he asks what she'll be doing. Chris replies that she'll have a similar job. The woman explains that the organization took Tweet in when he was 5 years old, and since then he's been fighting for the kingdom in the war. She says he's had enough and needs to live for himself from now on. Chris says there's no need to think too hard about it and asks if he wants to just say something. The tweet says he knows nothing and asks what he's been defending all this time. He reports that even when he killed the Demon King, he felt nothing. He explains that the Great War claimed countless lives, and he doesn't even know how many of his comrades fell in battle. He wonders what drove them to defend him to the last drop of blood. Tweet wants to know. He wants to live normally, like a normal person. He wants to feel what it's like to live a normal day. He wants to live freely. He just asks if he can. Chris says everything is fine. The woman explains that he should try to live a normal life. Chris says he thinks enrolling in the academy would be the best option. The woman explains that boys typically enroll in the academy at 15 to study, and if he wants to experience a normal life, it would be better to spend time with people his own age. The girl says that Tweet should first think about his name and suggests he choose one. Tweet says he's always been called by his number and suggests he consider the name John. The girl explains that the name should be something familiar and suggests Mike or Michelle, but Tweet says they don't sound very good. He says he's just a kid who doesn't know anything, but he managed to survive this hell, all thanks to Chris. Chris says she needs to prepare a biography and educational information. Chris explains that she understands and asks her to wait a little, then says she'll go create his life. He thanks her. Chris explains that she tried to hold back as best she could and always thinks of Tweet as a little brother, asking him to just let her know if anything happened. Tweet says that from that moment on, his life began as Tweet's new life. The tweet announces that something terrible has happened. He explains that he's lost and, if nothing changes, will be late on the first day, asking what he should do. He explains that where he arrived, he sees only a large estate, resembling a duke's house or another estate, and nothing resembling a school. Tweet asks if he's taken a wrong turn and tells him no, this is the Royal Academy of Bildars. Then Tweet hears a giant prayer and takes the first step into a new life, Bildara's Royal Academy. This educational institution is the largest in the kingdom, the birthplace of the modern hero Theon Bale, and Bale's many traditions and a long history, making it considered one of the most prestigious. The academy decided to increase enrollment in anticipation of the hero effect as the Kingdom of Terra won the Great War. The woman explains that this year, the academy decided to split the curriculum into 2 departments. Last year, there was only the heroic faculty, and to get into it, you had to pass an exam. Starting this year, if you fail the heroic faculty exam, you can get into the regular faculty, since everyone who passes the test gets into it. The tweet asks if the regular course is just a repository for those who aren't suited for the heroic faculty. The girl replies that yes, he's right. The woman asks Tweet what department he's decided to attend, and Tweet says he's going to the regular department. Tweet explains that he's going to school to start a normal life, so it makes sense to take the regular department, meaning he won't have to take the exam. The woman tells Tweet to go straight to the admissions briefing when he arrives on admissions day. A man asks Tweet if he's here to enroll. He answers affirmatively. The man says everything will be explained and asks everyone to line up. Fernez Evans says everyone is finally here, introduces himself as the instructor of the Bilderaz Academy's heroic department, and explains that the most famous heroes studied here. The woman says she was worried that the increased number of seats would reduce the quality of the students, but judging by what she's seeing, she needn't have worried. The girl explains that time is running out, so she finishes her greeting and notes that everything went very quickly. The tweet states that, according to the plan, the regular course students will go to class and wait until the heroic course exam is over, at which point peaceful school life will begin for him. He explains that the skills acquired by warriors, such as assassination and escape plans, are no longer needed, and he will lead a normal life. The tweet states that this is exactly what he wants to do. Fernez says that the entrance exam for the heroic faculty will now begin. Tweet says something, expressing confusion. Fernez explains that the rules are simple, everyone will be participating in a battle royale. He says the time is 1 hour, the location is the old building to the right, and there's a barrier around the building, so they don't have to restrain their magical abilities. Fernez explains that the heroic department is the department that raised heroes, not hero fans, and that they are destined to become the next generation of heroes. The man and several boys agree. Fernez says they don't need people who just admire heroes. Tweet says he wants to enroll in a regular department, to which the kid asks if he's scared and laughs that he wouldn't have given up so early in his place. Tweet explains that passing the exam for the heroic department doesn't mean he'll be accepted, and if he passes, he can still transfer to regular education. Tweet. He says that at the agency, he was always taught to stay away from telescopes, and even the thought of showing his weakness in front of a telescope gives him goosebumps. He asks what he should do now. Then the exam is announced. He explains that he doesn't have to take it. The tweet reports that about 1,000 people take the exam, but only 100 get into the heroic course, meaning, on average, each person needs to beat about 10 people to pass. The tweet explains that without diligence, he'll just beat half of them, 5 people. The tweet says, sorry. He punches the man, who falls, announces that there are still 4 left. 2 guys run down the corridor. The guy asks what happened and notices that something happened there. The guy screams that he can't win and needs to run, then he suddenly stops and says, in surprise. The guy says it's a trap in the hallway and says he knows he's trying to escape. Tweet is standing there, hooded, and asks who's going to take the exam, asking if the guy is one of them. Tweet then says he'll be returning to the regular course after the exam. Instructor Fernez laughs and says they're so weak they can't even hit her. Tweet. He says he'll just return to his village and needs 2 more. The woman explains that beating the instructor on the exam is unfair, and the instructor replies that life is unfair in general. Tweet looks at the girl, who moves quickly and draws her sword. Tweet says she wields her sword so quickly that ordinary people wouldn't notice, and explains that she uses the magical melee technique Fury to enhance her physical capabilities. He reports that she's very fast. Fernez yells, ha, and strikes with his sword, causing the other girl to fall and make a uka sound. He looks at them. The girl remains silent, and he informs her that the other girl's skirt has ridden up and asks if he should say anything to her. The girl sheepishly tries to respond. The girl screams that Tweet is a pervert and hits him. The girl says it was dangerous and is surprised. He restrains the girl, who is trying to escape. He says he's neutralized the girl and that's it, then orders her to stand, noting that she's the 5th. The girl suggests teaming up against the instructor and says she has a proposal. The girl says she heard there's 1,000,000 gold pieces for defeating the instructor, and notes that she said that right at the beginning, there can't be a mistake. She says she'll give the entire reward to Tweet and offers to do so. She says it's not quite like that. He's fighting strong opponents for the sake of his future. The girl says she just wants to fight strong opponents. Tweet explains that when you look at the smug face of a combat maniac, you feel like hitting her. Tweet says she's a combat freak, but a hastily concocted plan isn't so bad. Tweet says he'll free her and suggests they calm down and talk, asking if she can get this off his chest already. Alicia introduces herself to Tweet and asks his name. He tells Tweet that his specialization in battle is melee magic and close-range sword fighting. Tweet. He says he has a proposition. Alicia says she's figured out Farnese-sensei is a close combat fighter, so she doesn't think it'll be a problem, and if things do turn into a long-range fight, she'll count on him. Instructor Fernez says the girl has good fencing skills, but her attacks are too predictable, which is a weakness. Alicia asks if the exam is based on a point system, and if so, it doesn't matter how many points she lost. She explains that she can pass the exam if she can defeat the instructor. The instructor says he guarantees it. Alicia uses Fury and performs a swift kick. The woman strikes with her sword. Fernez says it's too weak. Alicia tries to fight off the attack, and Fernez says he won't give her a break. Fernez says that Alicia was able to create a shield using fixation, and notes that it's not bad. Alicia asks if Fernez's shield is magical. She tells him her sword is magical, but it's a regular magic sword, albeit slightly stronger than hers, and he wasn't expecting to win the fight just by being better equipped, so she has nothing to worry about. Fernez says they should have told her earlier that they'd already looked at her documents. The girl explains that she was the only one who hadn't looked at the student's documents and apologizes for that. Fernez says the girl uses a swordsman's fighting style and wants the exam to be fair. The girl screams, parrying the attack. Fernez then announces that Alicia has lost and will announce her failure at the end of the exam. Alicia yells that they must decide right now whether she passed or not. Fernez shouts the word sniper and Tweet says that he really is a sniper. Tweet explains that he warned Alicia about the change of position in advance and tried to avoid Fernez's line of sight as much as possible. He explains that she knew where he was, so she could guess where he would shoot from. Fernez deflects the arrow with her magic sword, displaying incredible reflexes for a human. He says that, if you think about it, she was able to block his shot with ease, meaning her sword was designed for endurance battles. He reports that this still remains a problem for him. He explains that he can only gain so much firepower thanks to the staff he accidentally found. A girl screams as she attacks the Fernez. The man tells the girl to back away, then announces the third and fourth shots. The tweet says they're done, and the girl asks if this is a win for Teviot and Alicia. The tweet says they're done and reports that they eventually defeated the instructor. The guy screams, the girl says it's incredible, he was able to hit the same spot on the instructor's sword. Alicia reports that this is a great opportunity. The instructor says it's impossible and asks if that's what he was trying to do from the start, intentionally allowing the shots to be blocked. The girl reacts with surprise. Alicia reports that they are still fighting. Fernez explains that she has lost. Alicia reports that Tweet's plan worked. The woman explains that it's clear he was the sniper and praises his superior skills, calling it genius. Tweet thanks him. He explains that he met a guy with a staff, and he briefly lent it to him permanently. The girl asks Tweet where he got it, since he didn't have it when they parted ways. He confirms this. The girl is surprised that he managed to knock the guy out right after they parted ways. Alicia explains that Farnese's swordsmanship is undoubtedly top-notch. Even when deflecting shots with her sword, she adjusted the blade's angle to reduce the strain on the blade and altered the bullet's trajectory rather than blocking it. Alicia says that, nevertheless, what Tweet did was incredible. He shot with divine precision. He tells Alicia that after they're done, he'll return the sword to its owner, and she can keep all the winnings, as he doesn't need them. Alicia explains that without fully anticipating the enemy's movements, it's impossible to prevent damage from accumulating, no matter how long she deflects the shots. She understands logically how it happened, but her emotions still won't let her accept the explanation. Tweet says it's finally over and asks what the hell he's doing here, since all he wanted was to enroll in a regular course. The girl wonders who this person really is. It's reported that the entrance exam for the Bilderaz Royal Academy has come to an end. Tweet failed the exam, just as I wanted. A woman tells students enrolled in the heroic faculty to wear white uniforms, while those in the regular year should wear black ones. Tweet says he now only wants to be a regular student and notices that she's the same girl he was with back then. The girl asks why Tweet is wearing a black uniform. He and the girl are silent. Sophia McKenna announces that this year she will be the head of the 1D class of the senior division and will teach everyone magic. Sophia explains that the next 3 years will begin tomorrow and hopes they will have a pleasant time together. Alicia notices that students from both years are in the room and asks Tweet to step aside for a minute. The girl suggests filing a formal complaint. He asks, a complaint? She notices that Tweet is wearing a black uniform, meaning he's in the regular class. He points out that Alicia is wearing the white uniform of the heroic faculty, but that doesn't explain why she's in the regular class. The girl explains that something's wrong and notices teacher Farnese. Fernez reports that the reason he failed the exam was because the recordings of the telescopes that were needed to observe the exams did not show them. The woman says she knows the two teamed up and defeated Teviot, and there are several witnesses, but the recordings only showed Alicia's combat achievements, and Tweet wasn't even on the telescope. The woman explains that according to the telescope recordings, Tweet didn't defeat a single person. Tweet says he deliberately avoided the telescopes, and the instructor asks why. He replies that it's his habit. Alicia tells Tweet that he has everything he needs to enroll in the heroic course, and Tweet explains that he wanted to be in the regular course all along. Alicia explains that she wanted to be in the hero course with Tweet so they could become stronger together, which would be more beneficial for her. The academy provides dormitories for all students, and each student receives their own room, which they can use as they wish. Bilderaz Academy is truly generous. Tweet says he studies here and asks if the other person studies here, and also inquires if they are in the same class. Glenn Uris explains that they only met during the hero exam and haven't flirted with each other, even though they've already started training. Tweet explains that he realized it was G. He says he thinks it's because of his appearance, and explains that people have mistakenly assumed he's applying for the heroic course. He explains that he's only been on the battlefield for a while before, but left almost immediately because he couldn't bear to look at the brutality of war, and he thinks that the tweet explains that this is unlikely to positively impact the normal, everyday life he wanted, as the circumstances Alicia is hiding are likely not normal. The tweet states that he is forced to decline and apologizes. Alicia understands and says she understands. Alicia says she doesn't intend to force her sense of worth on others because she's not a child and expected it to be that way. He says she accepted it so quickly, and he didn't expect that. Alicia says it's sad, but she's giving in. He asks if they can't just be normal. The girl says she can't be a training partner, but she can be a friend who won't bring her any profit or loss, just be a friend. Tweet asks for time to think about it, then accepts the girl's offer and says he'll take her words into account. Tweet explains that he doesn't know what the girl has on her hand and can't trust her. He explains that the words close, far, and placed refer to the distance, while combat and support refer to the purpose of use. He explains that today's practical lesson will cover ranged combat magic and that one should not be shy about using the staff to assist. The tweet explains that target shooting does not require the use of ranged magic, but rather teaches proper magic control, and that target shooting is an excellent method for assessing the sophistication of magic control skills, such as he explains that for convenience this magic is classified as close combat magic, but it is more often used in production than in combat, and it is useful to people in everyday life. He says that this magic is called alchemy, and in order to study it, the girl is surrounded by flying eyes. She says, "Shush," then points her hand and destroys the target, after which he explains that you need to be able to hit the target with at least the same accuracy. The tweet reports that 5 water drops hit the bullseye, and judging by this and Sensei Farnese's skill with a sword, they could be the 4th hero's mentors. The woman explains that let's begin the practice and asks to make sure the magic used is D rank or higher. The girl asks to use the lesson to practice D rank magic and above, such as water or fireball. He says he understands. He thinks he'll end up standing on the sidelines and in a bad position. He explains that E rank magic is something a beginner can master in a few. Tweet uses a fireball. He tries to hit the target, but the fireball evaporates before reaching it. The girl is surprised and says that the fireball evaporated before it reached the target and asks if Tweet saw it. Tweet explains that students from the regular house never. He says everyone is humiliating him now. Glenn orders Tweet to step aside, calling him an ordinary student. The others point out that it doesn't matter how much an ordinary student practices, it's a waste of time, and that it's not Tweet's turn to practice yet. One of them says that it's. The tweet says they're getting more and more arrogant every day, and another guy says these fucking students are from the heroic department. He says it's much easier to just ignore this kind of aggression, and the man says yes, but that doesn't mean he can't do it, adding that he thought he hated fights. The man comes up with the idea of having fun by picking up chicks after school and suggests it to T. 2 girls explain that the key to picking up girls in the capital is to feign experience, so they'll think the guy has done it many times, but in the village you can't do that. Otherwise, people will think you're a womanizer. Glenn says he'll show them how and suggests they start by observing him. Tweet. He explains that he used to spend his free time after school reading books. The Special Forces unit was disbanded after the final battle, after which he was enrolled in the academy with the hope of starting a normal, average life as a 15-year-old boy. He explains that after a week of being here, his life ended in a change. A guy asks if he can steal some time. A girl yells at him for being a pervert and hits him. The tweet says he should at least try, adding that it's an important experience, then says he'll try it again. The young man explains that it's his turn now. The tweet says that fuck it, somehow. The young man says he thought things would be different if there were 2 of them. He explains that picking up girls is like letting the other party go at their own pace, waiting for the right moment, in other words, fishing, and that it's time to try this method out. He asks if the earrings are from the kingdom of Arcadia, and the girl confirms. He explains that he's been to. The woman reports that her shoes are dirty from wiping and her hands are stained from carrying a heavy load, and that there shouldn't be any mud puddles in the city since it rained 2 days ago. The tweet explains that the carriage was late because of the rain, which is why his shoes are dirty. He apologizes and asks if it's okay if his friend goes with him. The girl agrees without any problems. Glenn says hello. The girl asks him not to take what he said to heart and runs away. He apologizes. The guy says, oops. He says he's thinking of trying again, feeling a little. The guy says he feels like he's seen the girl somewhere before and asks if he has. The man says he's found his target, a nice girl for 12 hours. The guy agrees to try, and the man suggests they go. The tweet explains that he never wanted to cut ties with a guy like this, and he asks if there's a good restaurant nearby where he could sit down and rest. The girl apologizes and says she's willing to help. She explains that he's apparently just arrived in the capital and is a little lost, tired from all the walking. The girl explains that he's unfamiliar with. Tweet says he'll buy whatever they want. The girl apologizes and asks to discuss it with her friend first. Tweet explains he can't leave her in trouble and asks if this is really okay. The girl says things are going better than she thought. Tweet offers to take them there. The girl asks what. The girl says he told them to buy them whatever they wanted and asks if that's right, turning to Tweet. The girl admits to being disappointed and says she didn't know they were such womanizers. He explains that today was the first time he'd tried to pick up a girl in his life and adds that it was. Tweet asks what's more important and what they were doing there, and wonders if anyone would appreciate a change of scenery. The girl says she truly believed they were in trouble and, along with another character, sincerely apologizes. The woman offers to get more drinks, if they don't mind. He explains that Mise is an idol for all the guys from the regular department, and he would never notice, explaining that she's beautiful and strives for the dangerous life of an adventurer, which everyone adores. The guy says he respects her for this goal too, and the girl asks him to stop. A tweet states that he tried to hit on a classmate because of another character and asks why he didn't tell him about it. Another guy explains that he just thought Tweet might be able to hit on her. A girl calls someone a jerk. She says Tweet was holding back. He says he wasn't holding back, and that's really all he can do. The girl explains that he can use Sniper Shot because it's D-rank magic and asks if he's hiding his abilities. She also says that it sounds crazy that he can't use fire. Tweet explains that if it's long-range magic, he can use it, but he's never studied other types. He reports that an instructor at the organization said 2 spells would be more than enough for him. The guy asks Alicia if she's defeated Farnese-sensei, and he reveals that the only one who actually defeated Sensei was him, not the other guy, and explains that it was the result of their teamwork. Turning to Alicia-san. Alicia-san is indignant. He continues to meet his classmates today and wonders what happened. The man asks. The tweet is reassuring, explaining that the situation hasn't yet reached the point where violence is necessary, which explains why the shopkeeper isn't giving in despite being a noble. The girl states that the situation will soon reach a point where, when it comes to nobles' personal interests like this, they'll kill. He says that people in the capital don't understand their place, and he'll teach them what happens when an ordinary person resists a nobleman with his own hands. The man in the top hat makes a sound of fear. Another man shouts, "Sig!" The woman says that, for the record, what he's about to do is called murder, and says. The man explains that this isn't murder, but punishment. Tweet says his actions could disturb the peace in the capital. The boy and girl agree with Tweet and say he's not the one to decide this matter. Tweet says he understands the situation. He says he's a loser who can't even use D-rank magic. The man explains that this man is the embodiment of all ordinary students, and if he continues to interact with him, his worth will be called into question. The man explains that he was lost as an ordinary student and heard Zig. The woman says Tweet's conviction is stronger than his own, but she wouldn't be so sure of it. She explains that the ordinary people have deceived Tweet and damaged his common sense. The man warns him not to be arrogant about the ordinary. Tweet tells the enemy to stop casting their spell and put away their sword, warning that next time they won't miss. The enemy, confused, asks what just happened. Tweet tells them it's bad. The enemy shouts that they'll wipe Tweet off the face of the earth, but he says that he warned you. The man says that you shouldn't dare order him around. He makes a sharp gesture with his hand. Tweet screams in pain and calls out to Zigson, saying it hurts. The man calls Tweet a pig, and Tweet threatens to kill him. The guy says there's something else he needs to do and orders him to pay for the sword. The man orders him to stand still. The man says they need to stop the bleeding immediately and suggests retreating this time. The girl asks Tweet what just happened. He explains it's a rank issue. The girl explains that focusing on speed and rotation doesn't matter how much she improves the bullet spell, which fires a bolt of mana at a target, and doesn't believe Zig could block it, as she's never seen anything so extreme. Tweet says he's a former city janitor. A young man calls Tweet to go get something to eat. He informs him that Zig is absent today. The young man tells Tweet that he will go to the cafeteria first, and Tweet replies that it's fine. The tweet states that yesterday's actions left him with a hole in his arm, and he likely decided to play it safe and rest for a couple of days, but she should be back to normal by night with the help of support magic. Alicia says ZG didn't show up today, and they can't say for sure yet. The girl says that maybe she shouldn't go there either. He explains that Mise is having lunch with his friends today, so yeah. He says that's what he's been meaning to ask. He asks if the girl has friends in the heroic department. The girl yells that it's rude, but adds that. Tweet says the girl is a loner. The girl yells that this is called being independent. The girl explains that she doesn't make friends and doesn't like to engage in such interactions because students from the heroic faculty consider it normal to insult regular students. She's sure Tweet has a question. He informs her that starting this year, the academy is dividing students into the heroic and regular departments, and their uniforms are also different. The former is black, the latter is white. He explains that the heroic students look down on the others, and that's something any academy student would say. The girl explains. The girl asks Tweet what's wrong with his face, and explains that he was a city janitor before entering the academy. Tweet explains that it's nothing, he just realized he never would have thought of it that way in his past. The girl explains that she's referring to modern janitors who are well trained in manners. He says that his head would have fallen on his shoulder at that very moment, and if someone can't adhere to the daily rules, it will be hard on the battlefield. The girl asks if they were that strict and says that's how it really was, and by the way, she's not kidding. The girl believes that being dressed The girl says Tweet isn't interested in the opposite sex, and Tweet asks what she's saying. He explains that in a situation like this, he'd usually be embarrassed or something, but now he simply adjusts the girl's collar and asks what if he does this. The girl blushes and looks nervous at first, but then looks serious. He turns to a girl named Alicia and asks what's wrong with her. The tweet states that the girl's eyelashes are quite long and that if she's going to blush, she shouldn't do it first, trying to force it on him. The girl declines, saying she didn't expect him to say something like that, making noises while doing so. He asks if the girl didn't want him to say it and blames her for everything. The girl explains that she communicates with Tweet a lot, but there's a side to him she doesn't know about, and that makes her want to reveal it at any cost. He says that he's already figured out who she is, and Tweet says he's a suspicious guy, and the girl says he's a suspicious guy too. Then a caption appears saying it's the next day. A man in uniform addresses Tweet by name. A guy with short blonde hair asks Tweet if his name is Tevayat or something, to which he replies yes and asks what he wants. The guy with short blonde hair then challenges Tweet to a duel. Several people present react with surprise. The man explains that everyone is equal, whether commoner or aristocrat, even royalty. He explains that he treated the girl well because she was from the same faculty, but she had become too arrogant. The man orders the girl to shut up. The boy informs them that the duel hasn't started yet and asks them to take the situation calmly. The man warns that next time he won't just grab their hand. The tweet explains that they haven't done anything wrong and asks them to just let him go. The man explains that if they leave things as they are, other students might get involved. He tells him that ultimately he just wants revenge and says he's just like a child. The man demands silence and explains that it's just a satisfying act of revenge because it damaged his reputation. The man says he should make an example out of the tweet because it would be too stressful. A woman speaks of revenge. The tweet suggests accepting a duel. The woman explains that this is a spontaneous decision of the heart, and refusing the duel would be an insult that would lead to major problems in the future. She adds that nobles become very persistent when it comes to their damaged reputation. The husband. He reports that he just heard a duel between students from the heroic and normal houses. The girl says that news is spreading everywhere, and the boy confirms this. He explains that he might as well have lost on purpose. The girl says that he can't pretend that he can't. The girl says she now knows what Tweet is trying so hard to hide and asks if this was his plan all along. Tweet says who knows, but he really wants to learn more about himself. Tweet explains that, ideally, he doesn't want to anger Zig any further and that he wants to lose in the most embarrassing way possible. He says he can't say. The man says he'll be happy if that happens. He confirms this with the word yes. The girl announces that a referee will be present and asks if there are any objections. She explains that the duel will continue until one side surrenders or can no longer fight. Tweet states that both sides are ready. The man with the staff states that everything is fine with him. Tweet notes that he has accepted everything. The guy says it's a military-grade staff. The man explains it's the magical staff, Kaiser, and is sure a lowlife like the guy doesn't know about it. The man explains that the staff was used in the Royal Army's last war. The guy asks if that was because he prepared it. The guy attacks Tweet, who dodges. The guy says he'll kill Tweet first, then everyone else. Tweet says they don't talk about such cruel things. The guy explains that accidents in duels are common. He says he will never forgive her and will take his time torturing her, watching her slowly stop breathing. He says he will try to be more careful with her than with Tweet because she has looks, and killing her would be a waste. The Tweet calls this what's called privilege and mocks the ignorant. The man explains that they laid down their lives fighting against the Demon King to save people like him and declares that he will never accept it. He says it's time and screams about the need to end this. The guy laughs and says that this staff is capable of casting magic while in a state of heavy fire, and someone like Tweet who can't even use D-rank magic has no chance of success. The girl warns Tweet to behold the power of Kaiser, and he notices it. The tweet states that there is one thing Seed doesn't know yet, and says he has seen the staff countless times on the battlefield. He explains that Kaiser is capable of casting magic while in a state of intense fire, but if it occurs in a part of her internal structure that is unprotected from the released heat, and if she takes any damage to that part, it will break. The man strikes, and the part breaks. A girl screams in pain, and the guy next to her is also in shock. The tweet tells the man not to move. The man, sitting on the floor, screams in pain and tries to get up but can't. The tweet explains that if the man dies under the current circumstances, no one will suspect him, and the unfortunate. He tells them his demands are very simple. Don't cross paths with them, don't discriminate against ordinary students, and tell his henchmen to do the same. The man asks Daika to consider learning a few things from Alicia, but Daika refuses, saying that The tweet suggests that if a person values their life with all its limbs, then they should think before responding. He explains that he will present his demands again and asks her to think carefully before answering if life and limb are important. The man is breathing heavily and looks frightened. The tweet states that his duel with Sieg, a nobleman and heroic student, was cancelled due to an unexpected explosion, and the selection of the winner and loser was also postponed due to unexpected circumstances caused by the explosion. The tweet explains that if he had provoked them, the girl explains that her head is so confused and says she's starting to regret allowing Tweet to attend this academy. He says he's fine and has been given a position similar to his previous one. The girl guesses that he works at the Bureau, and he confirms it. The woman explains that the Bureau is an organization that protects the kingdom from clashes between commoners. Tweet points out that even if the Demon King is dead, the world is still rife with conflict in every corner. The woman reveals that Tweet's beloved sniper staff is also currently under attack. He reports that when their unit was disbanded, they initially wanted to send the girl to work at the Bureau. The girl explains that she refused and had previously stated the reason. He confirms this and says that, thanks to her, he can fully experience a taste of ordinary life. The girl replies, "You're always welcome." He quotes the girl as saying that, the woman informs him that Count Tergand's second son, Robert Tergand, will soon arrive with his Order of the True Light. Tweet asks the woman what her current job is, and she replies that she can tell him. Tweet explains that he must return to work. Tweet explains that the Order of the True Light is known. The woman explains that they have been assigned as bodyguards and asks if this job shouldn't be performed by the Knightly Order. He explains that their work will be completed once Robert Sama arrives in the capital, but doesn't understand why the order is heading to the royal capital. The woman says that Robert Sama is quite. Tweet says he thinks there's some big event coming up and asks everyone to look forward to it. Tweet says the academy will be fully involved. Tweet is confident that the Bilderaz Academy will be fully involved. Tweet asks about the event. The girl turns to Alicia and asks if something happened. He tells her that something has definitely happened to her and asks if Zig has done something wrong again. The girl explains that she used to have days when she was emotionally unstable, but a heart-to-heart talk always helped her get things back on track, and she thinks Tweet will get better. A girl asks Tweet if he thinks revenge is ridiculous. Tweet explains that she's asking whether revenge is good or bad, and says that he doesn't think revenge is ridiculous, and that the goal of getting revenge on someone is sometimes the only meaning of existence. The girl asks what he means, and Tweet replies. He explains that people obsessed with revenge often end up in a self-destructive thought process and don't even consider what will happen next. Some believe they can die now. He explains that there are still many days ahead where they can make a profit, but ultimately, they give up on life. He asks. Tweet tells Alicia that if she's going to get revenge, she needs to make it worth it. Alicia asks who she needs. The girl says she didn't mean anything like that. He says that although he thinks so, yes. The girl explains that she tries not to forget his words. The tweet suggests that ordinary life is far from simple and reminds us not to forget them. He explains that someone who grew up in the epicenter of abnormality had no idea how fragile normal life was. The tweet states that, at that moment, he should have stopped and discussed it with. The woman announces that she has good news for everyone today. She is sure that everyone has already heard about the True Light Order and the Royal Knights, who played a significant role in subduing the Demon King. The woman explains that the True Light Order is coming today to conduct joint exercises with the Royal Knights. The tweet suggests that these trainings could be seen as an advertisement to increase the number of young men who want to become knights. The tweet explains that besides the Order of True Light, the girl says that the Order of True Light is the only one who comes to the capital. The girl informs them that Count Tergand's second son, Robert Tergand, will be coming with them. She explains that she thinks he will also join the training, so Tweet will have a chance to talk to him. The girl asks if anyone wants to help. The woman says she will. The man and woman discuss how, if Alicia takes it on, everything will be fine, and the man asks if anyone else wants to help. Alicia says she's leaving the lunchtime committee meeting to someone else, and Tweet announces that the committee meeting will begin during lunchtime and asks everyone to head to the conference room on the third floor of the school building as soon as the break begins. Alicia understands. Then she says that starting from that day on. He says he doesn't know why she would do that. The girl says she heard that even though she doesn't come to class, she still comes to the committee and heroic faculty meetings. The girl explains that she has something on her mind, and even when she tried to talk to her, she kept repeating that she was fine. Robert reports that the guards sent by the army have arrived. The girl explains that they have come to escort him. The girl reveals that she was the most powerful agent operating in the shadows of the heroes. She explains that after the organization's collapse, she hides her identity and tries to lead a normal life. The tweet reported that Alicia-san didn't show up today. A few days ago, when Sylphia-sensei announced that the training would be held at their academy, Alicia, who was supposed to be an honor student, suddenly changed her attitude. He says he has a feeling something is going to happen during these 3 days of training. Alicia asks Tweet to tell him if he'll be her sparring partner. He tells Alicia that he thought they'd already discussed this issue and asks her not to rush into an answer because the guy says he doesn't have much time. The girl says now is not the time to think about whether she's rushing things or not. The girl asks for help. The tweet says he can't calm down and asks the girl to explain what's happening to her. The girl says she can't talk about it. The tweet asks her to calm down. The girl apologizes but says she'd rather be beaten half to death than fight right there. He explains he has no desire to walk through a minefield he can clearly see. The man asks Tweet if he's okay, and the girl says she's okay. Tweet says that no matter how you look at it, it's obviously related to the training, and asks what could have happened to her. Tweet says he needs information about a student named Alicia Mirishtan and that it seems like it's time to ask his mentor for help. The man asks Tweet how. The caption says it's the day before training. He tells Alicia they need to talk. Alicia explains she's a little busy right now. He asks if she's decided to be his sparring partner, to which he replies that's not why he came. He calls her by her first and last name. The tweet states that Galia Esperando, who died in the last Great War, was the only daughter of a former captain of the Order of True Light. He explains that Alicia Mirishtan was the maiden name of her mother, who died after Alicia's birth. The girl says she's certain. He reports that not only knights participated in that battle, but also mercenaries who helped Galshi defend the rear and were also found dead. The mercenaries' bodies were found far from the retreat route, as if they had been killed by another army after retreating from the battlefield. He explains. The tweet says they found items belonging to Galia near the mercenaries, and explains that a pure silver pendant, a gift from his late wife, was found near their corpses. The girl reports that after their mercenary status was over, they were also destroyed, and clarifies that. He reports that Robert's deputy overheard Robert's argument with Gallius, and that explains everything. He explains that Alicia's goal is revenge, but even if she manages to verify it, the chances of survival after such a thing are close to zero. He says that Alicia. Tweet says he's guessing the girl wanted to kill him during their joint training exercises, which is why she decided to join the executive committee. The girl explains that no matter how hard she tries, she'll eventually be caught and meet a tragic end, but she's also a good talker. The girl explains that Robert has a habit of never leaving his territory, and he's so cautious that he stays with his guards 24/7, so meeting him in the open is a rare occurrence. She explains that she must do this, even if it's risky and even if it costs her life. Tweet says they've talked before, and this path will leave her with nothing after all. He remembers everything she said then and asks if it's true that if she's going to do this, she should make it worth it. She replies that she still can't get over the feeling, Tweet asks. The girl says that he will become her favorite. He says that if this is so. Tweet asks what the girl is talking about. She explains that even during the kiss, he didn't let his guard down for a moment. She says that this will be enough to stop him and asks if this is how much he trusts his partner. Finally, the girl bids Tweet farewell. The girl asks him not to try to stop her. He says that if he continued to dissuade her, she would have drawn her sword right there without a second thought, and explains that he won't be able to convince her. He explains that the day of joint training has arrived. The tweet states that the captain and vice captain of the Order of True Light are the two best royal guards. A man with long blonde hair says that, if he's not mistaken, it's Lord Laurent Dulith, and another man asks if it's Lord Garm Easted. He announces that Alicia literally has a front row seat and explains that she's so lucky. He thinks she won't even have a chance to come up to him now. He announces that they have an announcement from the executive committee and explains that there will be mock battles between students and knights now. The tweet says it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, so they need to gather their courage and go forward, and asks if that means they might be knighted if they perform well. The guy replies that he doesn't think it'll be that easy. The other guy says he then went. He says it's a great honor. The man explains that Lauren Doolittle is a captain of the Order of True Light who influenced the outcome of the war no less than the previous captain, and that he is like someone who has always worked in the shadows. The man says he would like to test his strength against him, and Tweet explains that the opponent allows the student to strike first and assumes a defensive stance. He is much more physically advanced, and a protracted fight would be better, but this defeats Tweet's purpose. Tweet uses the rage technique and strikes, to which the opponent reacts with surprise. He strikes his opponent with his sword. The man reacts to the attack with surprise. He continues to attack, breaking the opponent's weapon. The man tries to parry, but he lands a powerful kick. The man reports that he is stronger than he thought. The tweet reports that the enemy used rage, making their reflexes even faster. The tweet says it's their turn now. Tweet strikes, and the enemy parries with their sword. The tweet explains that they might as well lure the enemy in. He says the opponent may not want to go all out against the student, but one move is enough for him. The opponent says he just wants to see Lauren's full strength and calls Tweet petty. Tweet says the sword is just a decoy and the real attack is lock. Tweet delivers a powerful kick, deflecting the opponent's attack. The man makes a sound of surprise. He reports that he hit weakly. The man screams in pain and strikes back. The tweet says enough, stopping the fight. The tweet communicates that he is present in the background of a crowd of people. He apologizes for the delay, and the man says everything is fine. The man explains that it is an honor to spar with the captain of the Order of True Light, and that he is still weak compared to the previous captain. He says he is not embarrassed because he is now the captain of the Order of True Light. Tweet thanks him for the sparring and asks his interlocutor's name. The man says he will protect his master with his own hands. The man says he will remember that. Tweet gives his name. Tweet explains that during their last exchange of blows, he barely managed to dodge a flying sword. He says the Bureau is going to do something about it, but doesn't go into detail. He explains that the Bureau suspects corruption, but despite his crimes, they considered his life useful to the kingdom. He says he can't really talk about it. The woman informs him that the Bureau operates solely for the good of the kingdom. The girl explains that it doesn't look like Robert's security will be relaxing anytime soon, meaning Alicia can't be killed during training exercises, meaning she'll make her move tonight. The tweet explains that after yesterday's conversation, he's definitely. The man says it's fixation magic. The man yells that the blow was weak. The man says, "Oh," and he strikes back. Tweet says everything is fine and apologizes, saying he forgot for a second to hold back. The man asks him to wait and thanks Tweet for the sparring, then says that's enough. He says his name is him. The man says he'll remember that. The guy excitedly tells Tweet that he managed to land a hit on the captain of the Order of True Light and calls him cool, and the girl agrees. He explains that he was just lucky. The man introduces the captain. The tweet states that he now has an accurate idea of Robert Turgan's strength, but Alicia hasn't made her move yet. He explains that the security surrounding the target, Robert Turgan, is impeccable, and even if she were to mingle with the rest of the executive committee, she would have absolutely no chance. He reports that he was so strong that he was called the strongest captain in the history of the order, and after that, he received the fearsome title of Demon Sword. His sense of justice was stronger than anyone else's, as was his devotion to the sword. The girl began training with the sword at a very early age when the tweet asked the girl if she wants to become a knight like his father in the future, and she agrees. The tweet informs her that he will then teach her the most important thing every knight should know and encourages her to live a righteous life. He says that a knight's sword must be straight and explains that a curved sword cannot protect anyone and will not earn trust. He advises living life by going straight toward what you believe in and making your sword just as straight. He asks Masha to swing her sword. It's said that years later, when the war was drawing to a close, the hero's group entered the Demon King's territory. The girl says that when the hero defeats the Demon King, the war will finally end, and she's sure her father will soon return home. She also says she wonders what he'll say. The girl reveals that her father died bravely in battle to ensure an escape route for the hero's group. She explains that he lived a straightforward life until his death, never returning home, but she still vows to live by his teachings, adding that it's just like him. Tweet reports that a follower of Robert Turgan, now a subordinate of the Order of True Light, has come to deliver souvenirs from his father. Tweet explains that there is something he must tell. Alicia asks what is going on. Tweet says he overheard. He reports that before entering the Demon King's territory, Galia was stopped by the Tergan Duchy and at the same time heard their voices from a room that even the guards could not enter. The tweet reports that among all the words she heard were words like stealing and quiet. She recounts that the servant said that Robert, whose corruption had been exposed by his father, could have killed his father to silence him while pretending he had died during the battle, and she couldn't. He reports that, moreover, as soon as her father died, the mercenaries disappeared from their previously assigned course and fled far from the front lines. He explains that Robert considered this an act of treason and ordered the knights to kill them on the spot. The girl says that the sequence of events is so strange and believes that her death was caused by. The girl says she will never forget these words. The tweet says she will lie straight and all in order to see Robert Turgan dead. The girl reveals that the man is Robert Turgan, who killed her father to continue lining his pockets with gold, and that she wants to slit his throat right where he stands, but there are many guards in her way. The girl notices that it is TV8 and the current captain of the order. Tweet says he's still holding back, and the girl asks what she should do if Tweet sides with her goal, explaining that if he stands in her way now, her revenge will undoubtedly fail. The girl says it's not time yet, and she shouldn't lose her head. In the top right, a man announces that Robert Turgan will be attending a celebratory dinner outside the castle and will not be able to enter even with fully armed bodyguards. In the top left, a man says she must wait for the moment when Robert enters the castle. In the bottom right, a girl tells her father to be patient. The girl announces that the real battle will begin tonight. The tweet silently looks ahead. The girl says she must be very close to Robert and speaks faster. The man stands at the entrance to the building. The girl hides behind the bushes and looks toward the building. The tweet states that the castle is well defended from the inside, but if he does this right at the entrance, the guards won't be able to react quickly enough. The tweet explains that, as he planned, the guard will leave his guard and enter the castle alone, but now he notices that the guard isn't coming. The girl asks if he's really heading there. She notices that he's walking alone without any security. She wonders if this means she can actually kill him. The girl says that she can kill him, repeating this several times. The woman says, "Now, now, 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 now. Do it. Kill her and don't let him escape." The girl screams that she needs to draw her sword first and asks him to wait. The man tells her to calm down, and the woman replies, "No, no." A girl stabs a man in the neck with a sword, causing him to fall to the ground. The girl is breathing heavily. The girl laughs and says that she killed him, confirming that she really did let Robert's head go and is happy that she can now fly through the air. The girl says she feels very satisfied. She reports that she's standing right here, safe and sound, and asks why they told her she wouldn't survive. The girl breathes heavily, leaning against the bridge railing, wondering what she should do next and what to do now. The tweet says to run, to hide, and for how long. The girl explains that she's lived her whole life just for this day, never thinking about what to do next, and is simply going to live life straight after all this, and then announces that she'll simply go back to the academy. The woman says this is probably where she belongs right now. He tells Alicia that he's put an end to it. Alicia turns to tweet. The tweet says it sees everything. The girl explains that her face speaks for itself. She says that, surprisingly, she now feels completely empty inside and doesn't even feel alive. The girl reports that, immediately after the murder, she was so happy she was ready to fly. The tweet asks how she feels after. The woman says she was just lucky, and that's the only reason she came back alive. She asks Tweet what she should do now. He replies that he advises her to visit the infirmary first, as the sight of her face will attract a lot of attention, and advises her to think more simply about what to do in the future. The woman agrees. The woman says that after all this, Tebayet now has plenty of time to think. Tebayet thanks her. The text announces that more is to come and asks how Alicia's future will unfold. Tweet stands on the right and listens to the girl who says that she put an end to everything. He says that immediately after the murder he was on cloud 9, but now he feels completely devastated and asks what he should do now. The girl explains that, surprisingly, right now she feels completely devastated. The girl apologizes for being late. The girl says she wasn't feeling well and stopped at the first aid station on the way. The woman says the girl should then return to her seat. The tweet is silent. He says they were very worried because Alicia started acting strangely and asks if she's okay now. He asks her not to overwork herself and promises to lend a helping hand if she needs it. Alicia thanks everyone. The man confirms this. The tweet states that he has some business in town today. The man asks what business exactly. The girl explains that she wanted to apply to the Adventurers Guild. He tells her that being an adventurer allows her to enjoy freedom like no other and invites her to try it. The girl replies that perhaps she should try it too. The man asks if she's serious. The girl repeats the word freedom with a question. He explains that registration is completely free and offers to register. The tweet says the girl finally realized it. The man says it's amazing to be able to just think about the future. The man in the cloak asks if the tweet is Alicia Mirstan. He blocks the attack with his sword, protecting the girl. He explains that if he hadn't reacted in time, Alicia's head would no longer be in its rightful place, and says everything is fine. The girl exclaims Tweet's name. The man asks who he is and says they found something in the royal garden last night. Alicia Mirstan. The man asks if Tweet recognizes the sword. Alicia tells them to run away from here. He takes Alicia by the hand and starts running. A man shouts at Glenn and Misa to run and asks what's going on here. Another man turns to the two people and asks if they're okay. Tweet screams that this is bullshit and orders Glenn to stop. Glenn runs away. Tweet screams and throws a punch. Tweet is surprised and asks what's going on. He says he only needs Alicia Mirstan. He orders Glenn to take Mise and run away from here. Glenn asks what he's talking about. The guy coughs. The woman tells Glenn that she believes in him and Thwaite. Glenn shouts for Thwaite. The hooded man says he doesn't mind if the boy runs away too. The woman promises that neither of the two will be harmed if Thwaite leaves the girl with her. The man in. Tweet says the other guy is absolutely right and stabs him. Alicia notices what's happening and screams her name. Tweet says they need to fix the situation and orders Alicia to run straight into the alley. He says he won't let them escape and strikes. The girl is surprised. He makes a sound of pain. The girl screams Tweet's name. Tweet says he's moving very well, like a normal student. Tweet coughs sharply. He yells at the girl to run. The girl says it's impossible. He asks if it's him and yells for her to run. The girl asks him to run faster and calls her Alicia. The girl tells him that he lost, the same him everyone knows. He lost so easily. The girl runs away. A tweet says he's dead. A tweet says he is. A man asks where the girl is running. The woman reports that she was briefly detained. He is lying on the ground. A woman is crying and covering her mouth with her hands. The tweet asks why she's doing something so horrible and says they're only coming for her. The woman screams. He says the girl still asks why, even after she's already seen their armor. The girl listens in surprise. He explains that they are Knights of the Order of True Light. The girl listens anxiously. He explains that they are knights now, but before they were just war orphans, saved. The woman says they're just like her. The man asks why she's running away and reminds her that she knew it would end this way. He explains that he can't just take back life without any risk when someone fulfills their wish in exchange for their future. The man asks. Tweet reveals that 3 people were consumed by the girl's karma and lost their lives, a result of her clinging to her life even though she had already abandoned all hope for the future. The girl admits that the deaths of Tweet, Glenn, and Misa are her fault and agrees that everything is as Tweet said. The woman reports that the only feeling she felt after carrying out her revenge was emptiness. She says she sacrificed everyone simply for the pleasure of emptiness. She says that if she had known how things would turn out, she would have told the revenge to go to hell. Tweet says his name with a question. The girl says it with disbelief and tears in her eyes. The text reveals the connection between the vengeful knight and Tweet, as well as the continuation of the story. The girl says that this is impossible, and says that he was also hurt. He tells 8. He explains that he was hit by that guy from the Order of True Light. The tweet says it will start from the beginning. The girl explains that everything that just happened was a farce. The man explains it happened because of his revenge and because of Mies and Glenn. The girl names Alicia. He says that he made Glenn and Mies's heads using alchemy and that they are fake. He also says that he will start by saying that he would never die so easily. The tweet explains that he was the knight in question and his former colleague was an acquaintance. The girl says that everything that happened today, and not only today, seems incredible to her. The tweet suggests that the girl is probably joking. The girl says that then Robert, whom she killed, he reports that Robert Tergend is alive and confirms this. The tweet states that the one the girl killed last night was a doll he had prepared in advance, and the real Robert is still alive. The tweet explains that he first wants to let everyone know that no one knows what happened last night, and suggests that the Order of Light is currently partying in the capital. He says, the girl reports that since learning of Galia's death, she's decided to exact her revenge, but only felt satisfaction at first. She explains that in the morning she felt empty and afraid that the knights would find out about her deed, and in an attempt to drown these feelings, she ended up thinking about the future. The tweet says that everything should be fine with Alicia now, but no one will like this ending. The girl explains that the only feeling she felt was regret. The tweet makes sense. The girl says that even after learning that Robert is still alive, she no longer feels the urge. He reminds her that he spoke earlier about the need to make revenge worthwhile, and explains that most newbies begin to self-destruct out of hatred, but he can't commit revenge, considering his future. The girl explains that this is precisely why such people become professionals in this field, and he adds that for experts. A tweet says to take out the trash. The girl listens. The tweet leaves, making a sound. He says he doesn't remember the bureau asking him to tell him what kind of trash he was going to take out, and that he remembers looking for listening equipment. He explains what asked him to do this. The woman explains that, as expected from the Royal Bureau for the Protection of the Aristocracy, Tweet announces that he has brought the item he asked for and offers to take a look. The man says he will pray for Tweet's success. The man asks to taste it to see if it's poisoned, to which the servant asks what, then says he understands and tastes the drink. The man explains that he told him to taste it to see if it's poisoned. The knight turns to a man named Robert and says the guards are very strong as they are in the royal castle. The tweet says that if anyone is targeting Lauren, it's him. The armored man explains that the other side is just a rumor, but their name has been mentioned frequently among the army's higher-ups, and he's sure Lauren has heard of them too, a secret organization run by the kingdom. The man reports that one of them killed the Demon King single-handedly when even a hero couldn't defeat him, especially those called aces. He says it's very hard to believe. The man explains that he's very wary of the existence of such organizations, but there's no smoke without fire. The man says that one can't trust an organization that keeps its existence secret. He explains that one can't trust so easily. The man believes he left no evidence and is confident of it. The man tells Laurent that many of their men were injured during the Great War, and he would like to join their ranks. Tweet says he's nowhere near as capable as the former captain, but he'll definitely protect them. The man asks Laurent how the training sessions with the students went and whether they found any. He reports that, as far as he can tell, the man is very talented. The man brings a gift for Mr. Laurent and explains that the sender is one of the students who participated in the joint exercises. He asks if the gift is for him. The man explains that a member of the order patrolling outside. Tweet tells Lauren he can't see anything and asks what's going on. Lauren screams that he needs to open the window. The man in the trench coat furiously demands to know what this all means, while the other man panics and says he doesn't know anything. The man reports that a target has been detected. The man shouts to Mr. Robert, asking him to come over, and mentions gunfire. The man explains that a rumor is circulating among the higher-ups of the army. The tweet reveals that the hero is someone who has slain countless demons, and even taken the life of the Demon King, calling him the so-called Shadow Hero. He explains that this is the dark side of the Terraria Kingdom, Special Mission Organization No. 2. He reports that the target has been successfully eliminated and asks how his partner is. The woman replies that he's doing great, as always, and asks him to thank her later. She explains that no one could handle the partner, so he was gathering dust in the closet anyway, so she decided to drag him out. The girl asks what's wrong. The tweet explains that information recently leaked that Robert Turgand was planning to pull off some shady deals during his stay in the capital, and he figured it out. The tweet states that he now understands why the Bureau is so willing to cooperate with him, and says he knew. He explains that back in the days when he killed the Demon King, it was the first time in his life he killed a person of his own free will, and it wasn't for the country or for Alicia. He explains that this was the only thing he felt back then, and he believes that's all there is to it, but also explains that it isn't. The tweet says it's time to return to peaceful, everyday life. The next day, he reports that it was their doing. Tweet announces that Count Tergand's second son, Robert Tergand, has been murdered. The girl says it's a contract killing and that the world has become very cruel lately and asks him not to play dumb. The girl turns and says she's beginning to understand who Tweet is. Tweet asks. He says he has no idea what the girl is talking about and that he's just a former janitor. The girl says that, then, at least let me say thank you. He and the girl look at each other silently. The man asks them what they're doing here and reminds them that school is starting soon. The tweet says that, now that the girl has reminded him of this, he can't say for sure whether he's fulfilled his mission to enjoy ordinary, everyday life. The girl explains that's how it works. The man exclaims, demanding a detailed explanation of the situation, and is surprised that they kissed. The tweet explains. The woman says she wants freedom and to be free. The woman reports that this dream is repeating itself. The woman instructs the class to follow her instructions for processing herbs to make a potion. Tweet says that preparing the mixture is quite difficult, and the man explains that you need to apply the right amount of pressure to crush the herbs. The woman instructs Glenn to add water, and the man slowly crushes the herbs and says, he reports that the cooking method is different from the one the teacher gave, and wonders if the girl is using too many herbs. The girl says it's her turn now, and that she just thought it would turn out better this way. The man says that no matter how you look at it, it's a failure. He asks Mies what. The girl announces that the second level potion is ready. The guy says it's really cool and that compared to his potion, it's like night and day. Tweet asks if it glows and calls the girl Teacher Sylphia. Teacher Sylphia explains that she taught him how to make a first-level potion and asks, he and the man say, how should I put this? Yeah? He says she does it so elegantly. He says he didn't think it looked that way from the outside, and now she's suddenly become rude. The girl says, yeah, right. The tweet informs him that it's his turn now, and he's curious about the taste of a level 5 potion if a level 2 potion is so delicious. The girl explains that the best potion is called a miracle potion, an elixir said to cure any illness with a 100% chance and even resurrect. He says he's using sleeping gas. He says everything's going as it should and asks what exactly he's doing. He's surprised. The girl says he hasn't changed. She explains that 2 months have passed since they were admitted. He explains that his success was a fluke. The girl says. The tweet reveals that even after he puts an end to Alicia's vengeance, she still acts as if she suspects he belongs to the dark side of society. She explains that he's gradually beginning to reveal his true nature. The girl explains that she's very gluttonous and can swallow her breakfast in one bite, but the other girl says that's not true at all. The man coughs and calls out to Mies, but he remains silent. He says he doesn't know if Alicia and Glenn noticed, but Mies also. Tweet says, then says that only one person could have made a call on his transmission card. The girl asks for forgiveness and says she'll step away for a minute. The guy asks if that's okay. Tweet asks for his debt back. The girl explains that her daily life could fall apart in an instant. He says that if she addresses him as 28, it must be a mission he can't properly accomplish unless he acts like a shadow hero. He asks if she's referring to information about Alicia. The woman explains that she's a former agent of a special military organization, 28, a royal bureau for. The tweet states that a princess from another country has snuck in here, hidden her status, and is attending school as a normal student, and asks why the princess would do this. The tweet understands that she simply ran away, and that's obvious. The girl explains that she was only told that the princess ran away. He informs her that even the fact that he is protecting the princess must not be revealed, and that the princess must also remain in the dark about him. He explains that some criminal organizations will try to kidnap the princess for ransom, and that the mission is generally quite simple, although there are a few suspicious elements. Tweet reveals that she's known at the academy as Mise Jovenze. He reveals that Mise is the second princess of the kingdom of Arcadia. Tweet explains that his bad feeling was correct. The woman says that ideally, Tweet should be on friendly terms. He asks what the man is doing early in the morning. The man says it's the next morning. The hooded man shouts something. The hooded man shows a glowing object on his finger. A man screams as he's punched in the stomach. Tweet punches the man hard in the face and looks at him. The man falls to the ground, and Tweet watches calmly. He wants to make sure of something and asks if he can kill him. The other man says there's no need to hold back and will simply order him to finish him off. The man accepts this, entering the room, saying the mission hasn't felt this way for him in a long time, and turns to a man named Tveit. Tweet says, "Good morning, Mise," and announces that this is their first time meeting here. Mise replies, "Good morning." Tweet explains that he decided to take a slightly different route for a change. Mise asks if Tweet always gets to school this early. Tweet assumes she always gets up at the same time. He tells Alicia that it's lunch break. Alicia says she doesn't know where Mise is. He explains that Mise always does this. She went to ask the teacher about something she didn't understand during class. Alicia says she didn't know that. He shows her where he is. The man says they're both members of Mise's elite guard. The tweet asks if they should call the paramedics. The man explains it's Mise's fan club. The girl says she knew about such people but isn't sure what to do. The woman says the man says the girl. He says something doesn't add up and wonders if there's a reason the second princess has never appeared in public. He reports that the Holy Kingdom of Arcadia is undoubtedly weaker and smaller than Terraria, and that neither the students nor the teachers know what it looks like in. Tweet tells him to meet Mise Hovens, calling her his favorite idol and addressing her earnestly as Majesty. Tweet informs him that she's now at the training grounds and explains that he can now more or less use rage. He suggests that perhaps it's time to learn. He explains that he knew she was very active, but he didn't think she was so selfless, and if he assumes that she didn't like the restrictions inherent in princesses, then this explains her escape. The girl says that perhaps she should do something for self-defense first. She makes an effort. Tweet stands against the wall in the hallway. A man in a cloak hides around the corner of the building. The man in the cloak notices people approaching and turns his head sharply. Several people pass through the gate. He says, "Don't dare interfere with Misa, who is working hard to achieve her goal." He explains that the enemy has professional killers and mentions poison. Tweet informs him that he's about to encounter something worse than he expected. The girl says they met again today. Tweet explains that it's late, so he'll take the chance and walk her to the dorm. The girl confirms this. Tweet explains that from the 5th floor of the men's dorm. He says it's not too noisy in the morning if the room is facing the main street, and he says his room is on the opposite side of the street, so everything is fine. The girl explains that her friend often complains about the noise from the fruit shop, which wakes her up on weekends. He says that's it. Tweet says he must protect Mise without her knowledge, not because it's his mission, but of his own free will. He does this as 28. Tweet says he won't let them ruin everything. He reveals that the escaped second princess of the sacred kingdom of Arcadia has snuck into the academy and turned out to be Mise's classmate. He reveals that upon learning of this, he began to keep an eye on her and protect her from the bandits who were coming for her, and in this regard he is fulfilling his duty as a bodyguard. Tweet reports that another guy has been disappearing quite often lately and explains that he's decided to follow Mise's example and put more effort into his studies. The guy apologizes for being late. The other guy greets Tweet. The girl asks where they're going and replies that she'd like to go. He reports that there are a lot of people in the establishment, noise and conversations can be heard. He opens the door and goes inside. The guy says it's surprisingly crowded here, usually. There's a tavern attached to the guild building, as information exchange is very important for adventurers. The man says registration should be done across the street. The girl and Tweet answer briefly. The man says Tweet is Sig Falchion, a student with. The man says to go finish the rest. The other man agrees. The guy says he gave up so easily. The girl suggests they just ignore him and go to the reception desk. He remains silent. The girl from Bilzard Academy explains that they, like the gentleman, want to register as advances. The woman explains that to obtain the second type, they must pass a combat and magical test. The tweet says that the dungeons are worth the risk of entering. The man confirms this and explains that they will encounter unknown life forms and mystical materials that they won't see on the surface. The woman suggests choosing the second type and her friend. The girl explains that the dungeons are filled with countless mysteries that no one would be able to see under normal circumstances, and unless they experience them firsthand, they can't call themselves adventurers. The girl agrees. The woman explains that to obtain the second type of license, they must pass 2 tests. The tweet states that each of them will be assessed with a rank, which will also display a numerical value for a particular stat, allowing them to decide whether they've passed or failed. It explains that the ranks range from A to E, with the average rank for a Type 2 adventurer being B, and rank A being awarded to those whose strength is at. The girl announces that the next test is speed. The girl explains that soldiers who were part of the special forces usually excelled in the speed aspect, which determines how quickly a spell can be cast. The girl, on the other hand, says that you might not be able to tell from her, but she's very confident. The tweet announces that it's now time for stamina, explaining that one must continue pouring mana into the crystal to maintain its glow for as long as possible. It explains that stamina is an individual's ability to continue fighting for a long period of time, and that soldiers who can hold their own for a long time. He informs them that their control will now be tested. He explains that control is the ability to avoid a failed activation or an accidental reset of a spell. He explains that when a spell is based on a vague image or used unnaturally, it ends in failure and, in the worst case, can cripple. Tweet reports that Glenn is clearly poor at control and apologizes for the wait, sharing the results. Mies Huyvens, Tweet, Glenn Irvis, and Alicia Mirishtan are presented with their power, speed, endurance, and control stats. The girl says she invited everyone to take the test, but ended up being the lowest ranked. He explains that the main discovery was Glenn's endurance and asks if he did any special training. Glenn replies that he doesn't like to talk about it, but he's never done anything like that. Tweet explains that his bullet is much more powerful than usual. The guy asks if he's compressing, and Tweet explains that it's one of the spell-enhancing techniques and that he's compressing mana. The guy advises Tweet to visit the library more often, to which Tweet replies that it's not his thing. He confirms that he is from the heroic faculty and came with Siet. The boy with short blonde hair demands an explanation, doesn't believe he received a B rank, and accuses him of failing to achieve it, but he asks him to calm down. The woman asks what's going on. The man says he's heard TV8's name enough, and asks what his name is. TV8 says his name. The man asks TV8 if he cheated during the exam. TV8 says no. The man explains that this is a typical answer to such a question, and the 3 men say they. Tweet explains that he will personally check his combat training, and if TV8 cheated on the magic test, his opponent won't be able to hide it during the fight, and he will be watching, so he won't be able to cheat again. The man apologizes for this. Tweet says he understands and believes. He explains that the combat test is conducted anonymously, as many don't want to reveal all their cards in a real fight except for the magical test. The man invites them to look inside. He explains that it's an automated doll called a golem and explains that they were first used in the Second Great War. The guy says the golem will start moving 10 seconds after the door closes and asks if there are any more questions. The girl asks if she can just give up if she can't win no matter what. The guy explains that she just needs to stand in front of the golem and say stop, and it will stop, warning that the stopped golem. The girl says she understands these are precautions, but she's uncomfortable being the only one whose anonymity has been compromised. Tweet says he doesn't like it either. The man asks if he can touch the golem before the test, to which Tweet replies, of course. Tweet explains that the golem is solid. He tells the master that he wants to make sure of something and asks if he should defeat the golem while they're in the same room, without any other conditions. The master says that, in his opinion, there's no other way to hide Tweet's abilities. He turns to the master. He then opens the door and leaves the room. The guy reports that the result is 0. The man says he can't believe it. The Tweet explains that he uses the lightning blade technique and strikes. He announces that he's finished. The man says that no one invited him, and the other man is indignant, asking what the hell is going on. The girl with long hair explains that it was a bit tactless of her, but is surprised that Mies managed it. Mies says that somehow she... The girl says the golem looked very familiar. Tweet says he's familiar with the golem, which is practically an ancient relic. The man shouts at them not to tell him he passed and demands to know where the judge is and why he wasn't watching Tweet. The other man explains that he says he's quite a mysterious person. The man explains that the word suspicious is a good description of Tweet and asks her to go home without him as he has things to do. The girl says that's the only way to describe Tweet. He asks if something's wrong. The girl says that she's free now, too. The Tweet says he's not normal and won't talk to them about it anyway, and the girl wonders if she should go directly and ask him. The girl says that even if he doesn't tell them anything and is constantly hiding things, they can still tell how he feels about them. The girl explains that she ends up getting. He says he's being followed, and his enemies are beginning to suspect he's Maise's bodyguard, so the best solution is to convince them he's not her bodyguard. The man addresses Tweet, calling him a commoner. He says it's just perfect. Tweet says, "Ugh," covering his face with his hands. The man yells at Tweet to shut up and calls him a little boy, but Tweet says no. The man warns that if he goes on any longer, people will gather here and says it's too much. Another man explains that this is what happens when an ordinary student gets into trouble. He says they both have alibis, so neither of them can be the bodyguard, and says there are 2 more candidates. He asks what to do with them. He explains that they will make their move tomorrow. The man says he knows this. He asks if this means they are back. The tweet states that the next day, after receiving the adventurer cards, they came to the guild to complete the first quest. The guy talks about a wide variety of quests. He asks Mise which quests are suitable for beginners, and she suggests taking on the quest to gather medicinal herbs. Mise explains that it's a fairly safe and easy F-rank quest, suitable for their 4-person group, although it seems too simple. The guy agrees. The woman asks if Glenn has encountered these creatures, to which he replies that he hunted them in his hometown. The tweet explains that he collects claws from clawed rabbits and explains that their claws can be used in various ways, such as creating weapons or medicine, calling these rabbits creatures. The guy explains that clawed rabbits are very timid monsters that often hide behind bushes and trees in the forest, but can sometimes jump out of the bushes, and everything will be fine even if you get close. The girl explains that if you're worried, you can activate your rage now. The girl asks. Tweet says he's already gotten used to hunting rabbits and can handle it without it. The girl asks them not to worry and says she won't be a burden. The man warns that Misa is depressed and asks her to do something. Tweet says stop panicking and asks what he should do. The man calls. He says he'll set an example and asks them to watch carefully. He concentrates, notices the rabbit which reacts warily. He lunges at the rabbit using a technique called rage. He catches the rabbit and breathes a sigh of relief. The girl asks how they like this example, and Tweet tells Mise not to worry. Mise reports hearing a heartbeat. Tweet explains that Glenn was able to defeat it easily, but even though the clawed rabbit is tiny, it's still a monster. Tweet explains that Mise, who isn't used to fighting, the girl asks if he can use long-range spells. He confirms this. The girl says that he will go around the rabbit and lure it out of the bushes, and then, with the help of a spell, he will get it. The girl understands this. Tweet spots a rabbit in the bushes. Mise is called and announces she's ready to cast the water ball spell. The guy says the job is done well. The girl is silent, then asks if everything is okay and is surprised. The tweet states that he needs to run errands, to which the guy asks what errands. The girl says she'll do her best too and confirms this. The tweet agrees. He says he forgot he received a mission in the capital, apologizes for disturbing her, and asks them to continue the mission together. The girl finds this suspicious and says there's nothing they can do. He says goodbye and suggests meeting later, and the girls agree. The man apologizes for not being able to get to. The tweet reports that the target has been located and is using a BF-28 Black Feather 28 sniper rifle. He explains that this is the same equipment as the man he eliminated earlier. The hooded man says that their target is in the woods and may have an escort nearby, so don't. A man screams that a sniper has appeared. Another man panics and says they need to hide somewhere, while a third man exclaims in horror what's happening. The guy reports that the target might be nearby and orders them to kill him. The man explains that the altitude is 200 meters. The man says it's 2 o'clock and points there. The man asks if they've arrived. The man reports that there are 9 people left. The man says he doesn't see a target near him. The man orders first. A man says it's an explosive trap and asks if someone intended to lead them to this place from the start. Another man orders them to retreat, and a third tells them to run faster, to which the first man replies, yes. The men shout to run faster. Tweet notices that they're heading towards Mise and says, he attacks a hooded man who laughs. The man says he knew he'd be here and asks if Princess Meshaliaze is nearby too. He remains silent. The man aims and fires his bow. The tweet states that Mise and the others might have heard the explosion and he must kill them all before they come to investigate. The man explains that the smoke makes it impossible to see anything, but the remaining magical power can tell where he is, and says the wind will clear the smoke. Another man confirms. He says, "Hob," then stabs the man with a dagger and throws it. The man screams, "Gee," and wonders what's going on. The man shouts that he didn't feel any magical power and doesn't understand how this happened. Then the man says that it's not surprising. Tweet says it's just a thread. The man curses. Tweet explains that Chris asked him to escort the second princess of the Arcadia Kingdom on the condition that no one else knows about this mission, and he has to protect her alone around the clock. Tweet calls Mise. The man says the stakes are very high. The man calls for Tweet to get out of here quickly, explaining that there was an explosion here recently and warns that they will have a hard time completing the task. He apologizes for being late. The man asks how the task is going, and Tweet clarifies that this is the issue. The girl asks Tweet. Tweet says that thanks to this attack, he realized that it is difficult for him to prevent all attacks alone. The girl turns to the guys and says that in honor of their first completed task, they raise a toast to the bottom. He, along with the others, raises his glass and says to the bottom. Tweet opens the door and asks if Chris can hear him, then asks for more people to join the mission and asks what's going on. Tweet explains that he was surprised by the sudden explosion nearby and asks what it was. The man says he's glad everything went well. The woman says he says it's difficult for him to defend Mise alone and asks for someone with strong firepower, and also agrees that the situation is serious. The man explains that reinforcements have already been sent and asks who they are, after which he asks her to guess. The woman remains silent and Tweet says he's asking for a replacement. Chris asks, "What?" The girl explains that her name is Oz now and greets Tweet, saying it's nice to meet him, then laughs and says he got her name wrong. The girl asks Chris why this particular problem child. Chris says, "Okay." The woman says they're short-staffed and, in her opinion, the girl isn't suited for defense missions. He says O2 can handle many difficult situations and clarifies that the man himself asked for more firepower. The woman replies that's true, but he apologizes. Tweet says it's better to get to know him now to avoid problems later, and notes that he's very friendly, unlike 28, and the girl says she thinks he can handle it easily. Tweet asks to be called Tweet, and the girl replies that she'll see. The man welcomes Tweet back. The girl says she's the idol Mise Hovense. The guy is surprised and says Mise is an idol. He says it looks like they've been hit hard, especially Mise, and turns to TVA. The girl asks TVA who the kid is, and the guy. The tweet says it's his former coworker, Oz, and if everyone's okay, she'd like to join their team. The man asks if she's a former coworker from that cleaning job and addresses the guys. He informs her that Oz has recently arrived and is currently living alone in the dorm, which costs her a lot of money. He explains that he thought it would be nice to do tasks together, but he won't force her. He guarantees that Oz is very strong. The man explains that, according to Tweet, Oz is a good person. Tweet asks if the girl is still drunk, and the girl replies that she's not. The girl says she enjoys meeting new people because it helps her feel the true spirit of an adventurer. The girl greets Oz-san and says it's nice to meet him. Mise agrees and says it's nice to meet him too. Mise. He reports that this time they've received a request for reconnaissance in the labyrinth and need to check the aftermath of last month's earthquake. The girl says she's a little nervous, but looking forward to it, and adds that, speaking of labyrinths, the man says that Oz, his test results. The girl says, Tweet is absolutely amazing, and Tweet replies, of course. The girl asks if she's cool and asks for more praise, but Tweet remains silent. Tweet says it's nice, and the girl says people are cool too. The man asks what kind of organization it is, and the girl explains that when he tells her to be careful with her words, and the girl replies, oh. The text says that Oz is a member of the kingdom's secret organization, to which he originally belonged, and now that the War of Heroes is over, she has become an agent of the Defense Intelligence Agency's intelligence organization. Tweet states that he is no longer a member of the organization, but continues to carry out Chris's orders, while secretly protecting Mise from danger, as his friend is the second princess of a nearby country. Tweet explains that he feels he can't cope alone, so he asked for reinforcements, and his. He says that it looks like there's an entrance here, and the girl says that this place is familiar to them. He confirms this. He asks if anyone has explored the jailer's tomb before, to which the girl replies that she was just walking around there. The guy remarks that she could have come up with something better. He says, the girl says she's sorry and doesn't remember anything, and the guy says he doesn't remember either and says that their experienced searchers are apparently completely hopeless. The man goes down the stairs. Several hooded figures stand in the darkness. A hand emerges from a hatch in the floor. The tweet reveals that this is the labyrinth. The girl explains that it's quite bright here and that this light is help from other adventurers. She explains that since the place is close to the royal capital, many adventurers have already explored it. The guy reports that this place is quite popular due to its abundance of resources. He explains that the labyrinth was designed to lure people into hunting such monsters. The girl tells Tweet that it means luring people. The man says he thinks he heard conversations and points to the goblins, and another man adds that it's not just them. The hobgoblin is present along with other enemies. Tweet says that encountering such an enemy on the first floor, and a hobgoblin on top of that, is unlucky. He explains that Mize and Glenn will have a hard time dealing with the hobgoblin. They have no advantage here. He says not to worry, it will all be over quickly. The girl asks if she's really alone, and he tells her to rely on him. Tweet goes bam and punches with fists that glow with energy. The goblins are surprised and react to the attack. The large goblin and two smaller ones try to defend themselves, but are hit. In the top right, he launches a spell. In the center right, a girl and a boy shield themselves from the attack. In the bottom right, the girl announces that she just used spells of the wind cannon and water cannon ranks. In the bottom left, the girl explains that she cast two spells simultaneously. The tweet states that this technique requires incredible stamina and magical power, and that Oz only needs a short time to use it. The girl explains that she once read about it in a book, calling it a double activation. The woman explains that Oz's magical power and magical compatibility are approximately A rank. On the fourth floor, a corridor with an open passage is shown. He asks what's wrong with Elia. The girl with the map reports that she can't see anything, and the guy next to her says it's creepy. The girl with the map also expresses confusion. The tweet explains that it would be troublesome if the chimera spewed flames in this small space, but the stairs to the fifth floor must be here. There's no other way. The tweet shouts for the boys to retreat. A man fights the chimeras. The boy asks what they should do and says they can't handle something like that. The girl tells Tweet to go forward. He understands and runs forward, and the others follow him. He strikes the large creature. A hobgoblin appears in the bottom right. The tweet says things are getting tense, and the guy asks if it's a trap. He says it can be destroyed with Oz magic, but it takes time to activate, and she likely won't make it in time. The girl says it's useless. She might as well jump down. The woman screams down. The woman explains that she can't see clearly, but it seems like there's scaffolding below. Tweet says Mize knew about it and asks why. The girl explains that it was dangerous and asks if Tweet has been here before. The woman replies that she's never been here. The man says who knew there would be a fifth floor below them. The girl asks Mize. He explains that this has happened before when they took the test at the guild. The girl says that she learned about it. He says it's something like déjà vu. The girl confirms that it can happen. The woman asks Mize if she often borrows books from the library. Mize. Tweet says now is the time to deal with the uninvited guests. The girl explains that with so much going on, everyone must be a bit on edge. She says that if they're going to leave, it's now. Tweet asks if she's leaving, the girl confirms, and says that if there are too many, she'll call him and he'll... A man asks where all the demons have gone, and another man says they are almost to the fifth floor. The man reports that they've already lost two, and asks if the shags are her protectors. The man screams for the enemy to die. The man explains that the enemy can see them in the dark and advises them to learn to hide. The man makes a sound. The man strikes with his sword, accompanied by a sound. The tweet tells them to take them to a large room on the fifth floor and destroy them. The girl replies that she understands. The man notices her and says, "Here she is." The tweet asks where she went, and another man points in the direction. He says it's goodbye now and fires his pistol. The hooded men scream, "What kind of magic is this?" and make sounds of pain. He laughs and says they have no chance, so they must die. The tweet explains that multiple activation combines multiple types of magic, greatly enhancing it, and this technique is called fusion. He explains that the twin dragons got their name for a reason. No group of people could stand against them in battle. He explains that this is possible thanks to a pair of special magical devices, Twin Dragons O2. He explains that you need to imagine the entire process in your head and then mix the magical power. The tweet says they did a good job. The girl says she'll go. The man thanks Oz-san for his help. The girl smiles. He says he knows a place and calls it a lake. The man asks Tweet to tell him the location. He explains that it's the main street in front of the girl's dorm. In the top right, the guy says that if there's a battle in the city, no one will be able to defeat the 28th, and the girl says that's cool. Below, the guy explains that he has something to think about and asks the girl how much information she received from the organization about the mission. The girl replies that she learned about Miz because... The girl says their mission is escort. Tweet questions the veracity of the information received and explains that he simply thought the information might be incorrect. He says they are too well equipped to be ordinary bandits and that it seems they have someone backing them. The girl asks if an interrogation is necessary, and he suggests asking the organization for support. He reveals that he is not Mai's protector, but her friend. He explains that if the organization wants to harm Mai, he wants to prevent it. He apologizes for the small lie. He wonders why the organization and Chris are only giving out the bare minimum of information. Perhaps it's related to strange knowledge or her sense of déjà vu. The tweet reveals who Mise was in the past. The girl says it's the right decision. He remains silent. He says he's captured one of the criminals and asks for permission to interrogate him. The man declines the request. He says yes. The man calls Tweet by name. The man tells him to kill the captured criminal and names Chris. Chris asks him to think carefully, and Tweet asks why, saying it's the right thing to do. Chris asks what the orders are. Tweet explains that something has changed significantly and asks if it's good or bad. Chris. He says he was aiming for his head, but she dodged it and laughs, happy. The girl explains that if he talks too much, she might accidentally hit him again. The guy says, let's exclude 28 from the princess escort mission. The girl explains that 28 is special in some way, and no one can take his place. Tweet says it's not that hard to understand and asks if that wasn't their strategy. The girl explains. He says that Zoe is already waiting and asks to tell Zoe that if he replaces him, he will come and kill him. He explains that he doesn't want to, especially why, suddenly. The girl rejoices and calls Oz-san. Tweet says he's hoping for her today too. The girl agrees. Tweet explains that their task today is to gather more medicinal herbs and suggests they get it done quickly. The girl confirms. The guy asks if it's just Mise and Tive Dev who will be there today. On the first floor of the jailer's tomb maze, he asks Oz if he found anything, to which Oz replies that he didn't find anything either. A girl collects plants. Tweet reports that they couldn't track him this time and suggests they take a look around just in case, which the girl agrees to. The girl says she'll go to the bathroom for a bit. Tweet notes that Oz is fine again, he was worried, as she was very upset by his actions. The girl asks him not to raise her voice. He reports that the enemies haven't gone too far and asks if the girl found anything, noting that it happened quite quickly. The girl says she'll be fine contacting Tweet, but isn't sure if she should tell him. He explains that they're people in white school uniforms who are in trouble and asks. The tweet states that he just received a message from OZ that the students of the heroic faculty are in trouble, and it seems a dangerous monster is lurking nearby. The girl asks if it's a communication device. The tweet explains that it's a rare magical tool that allows communication with people over vast distances. The girl says that if they don't help them, they'll regret it. He explains that they're supposed to be here. He tells Oz that he should keep an eye on his surroundings, and Oz confirms. He notices that they're downstairs. The man says that it looks like they only recently joined the guild. Tweet announces he's activated Fury and suggests they descend. The girl says it should be enough for 4 people, and Tweet replies, that's great. The man explains he doesn't know how to transport them. The other man expresses surprise. A young man and woman announce that they've come to help, asking the wounded to raise their hand so they can share some herbs. The man, confused, says they're the same ones. Another man asks if anyone knows how to make potions, and a third man explains that they haven't taught it yet at the faculty, and the man says that then. Tweet asks if Zeke is hurt. Zeke says he just has a scratch, the others can't move, and he was thinking of going for help. The man explains that there are dangerous monsters roaming nearby, and he can't defeat them alone. Tweet asks what kind of monsters. The man explains. He says the orcs are a bit stupid, but they're several times bigger and stronger than the hobgoblins, though they'll be weaker in such narrow corridors. He says he'll deal with the monsters. The other men are surprised, saying it's pretty close and asking if he's joking. The boy says he understands and asks to save them. The man asks if they need help and shouts that some D-ranker who can't even use magic can't handle the orcs, then calls for Zeke and asks him not to talk nonsense. The girl says she can handle it. Tweet says they'll understand when they see it. The man says that even if they couldn't handle them, then the man orders them to shut up. The man explains that it's true. Tweet asks if it's TV8. He tells Misa to stay here, and Misa agrees. He then leaves, followed by a huge beast with a boar's head, and the 2 men react in panic to what's happening. Tweet kicks a large, pig-headed creature while simultaneously extending his hand toward his sword and uttering the word, lock. He then leaps and plunges his sword into the creature's head, followed by a kick and a pistol shot. He says he's alone and screams. The man runs away in panic. A girl with long hair comes out to meet a large creature with a pig's head. The girl says, The creature looks at the girl with tears in its eyes. He looks at the girl intently. The girl holds back her emotions. The tweet states that he is using the blade technique while protecting a girl from a large opponent's attack, while a man on the side says, okay. He says he wants to ask directly. The girl turns to Tweet. The girl is sitting on the floor telling something. He's standing next to her and holding another girl's hand. A tweet asks if he's ever worked as a bodyguard. The woman says she's met people who have done similar work before and asks if she could find out the purpose of the question before answering. He says that he is not familiar with this profession and also does not hide anything from the girl, who asks if he is hiding something from her. At first, the man says he's not there. Tweet explains that Tveit then said he was in the library, but there were always some rocks and dirt on his shoes and pants. The girl asks if he left campus. Tweet explains that he became suspicious when he was late for. He says he's not familiar with this profession and isn't hiding anything from the girl, and also suggests that he might be wrong to suspect Tweet of something based on the events in the labyrinth. The girl explains that he's definitely hiding something and that he's protecting her, while noting that it's difficult to understand. The tweet states that if he does, his bodyguard should follow him. The girl runs, laughs, and pretends to run away, explaining that she thought someone was following her, but then admits she seems to have imagined it all. She is surprised and asks what's going on. The girl says she's happy and can continue being friends with Tweet. She explains that then it means being free and wants to be free. The girl reports that now déjà vu comes not only from books, but also from memory. Then she notices that they've finally been caught and asks who they are, but the man orders her to shut up. The girl asks him to let her go, and the man says they're lucky and it's time to leave before the bodyguard catches them. Tweet comments that it's strange that Oz isn't answering the call and suggests that something unexpected might have happened. Tweet asks Oz a question. Tweet explains that they need to keep a closer eye on her. Tweet asks if they should keep an eye on her, but immediately replies that she is. Tweet is watching. He says he'll disappear before she senses him and explains he can't back down now. The man in the cloak demands she let him go, shouting Mize's name. The man in the cloak covers the girl's mouth with his hand. The tweet begins the liquidation, stating that his main goal now is everyday life, just like back then. The hooded man shouts for them to stay away and tries to protect the girl. The hooded man says he won't allow information to leak and will maintain the secrecy of the mission. The hooded man, he says he'll fight for it. The girl calls Tweet by name and asks if it's him. He confirms it is and suggests they leave first, explaining that the girl has a lot of questions right now. The girl agrees. The woman asks who he is. The tweet states that he's a member of the Terraria Kingdom's special forces. The woman explains that she can't answer that question, and the man says he'll try to guess. He says there's a secret organization in that country too, and he doesn't know all the details. The girl says there's a secret organization operating in the kingdom of Terraria, and she doesn't know all the reasons, but all its members were sent to the last war of heroes. He explains that after thinking about it, he realized the girl's abilities were too specialized. The girl explains that this skill can't be mastered overnight and requires a tremendous amount of practice, and also says that the person she's talking to should already know her true identity. The tweet states that this is a pretty good guess for a student and orders them to stop pretending. He greets the second princess of the kingdom of Arcadia, Misheriazi, and apologizes for the inconvenience. Misheriazi asks Tweet to stop and says he can address her as he always did. He apologizes and confirms that he understands. Misheriazi explains that. The tweet says she doesn't know who ordered it and denies that he knows. The girl says she can't say who it is either and asks if maybe he doesn't know who it is even though he already has an idea. Mies says that her father, upon learning that someone was stalking her, immediately assigned a bodyguard, and probably all the daughters who ran away from home are already being guarded by someone. He says that Mies just said that she ran away from home, to which she confirms. Tweet says he thought the escape was just a cover to hide the real reason and that the girl is good at hiding, and asks if it's wise to reveal such things to him. The girl explains that she's not worried because she trusts Tweet completely and tells him that when her father was young, he reveals that he hides his identity, and because of this, Tveitson had to constantly protect him, fighting to protect his daily life. The girl explains that she knew Tveitson would say this and apologizes for everything that has happened so far because Tweet says he trusts the girl. The girl says she likes her normal life with everyone and asks what to do now. Tweet asks her to treat him like before and explains that he will. The girl takes him at his word and says she wants to be free. He greets the second princess of the kingdom of Arcadia, Princess Misheriazi. Misheriazi tells Tweet that he trusts him completely and asks him to treat her as before, explaining that he wants to protect the life he spends with them. He asks not to state the obvious, as he himself is going to. The girl says Tweet can always rely on her, and thinks he's already realized no one will be able to properly communicate with her if they find out she's royal. Tweet explains that the girl had friends in the kingdom of Arcadia, but most people would just start flattering her. The girl laughs and says, he says that Mize should then show everyone her true nature, since it's strange even without the fact that she's a princess. Mise replies that there's only one. Mise then asks if he means her true nature. He notes that not wanting to forget her hidden side is starting to get in. Tweet says he's Mise's idol and is sure she won't be boring. Mise asks him to forget it and wonders why he brought it up. Tweet asks Mise what she thinks of him. Mise explains that he often surprises her and that she's not lost in. He says that since his work has been revealed, there's no point in hiding information about Oz. It'll be even better this way, since he won't have to constantly hide or pursue his target. The girl says that since he's already had so many adventures, he'll be able to communicate freely with his friends, and Glenn and Alicia think so too. He explains that Oz is also. Tweed informs Ms. that he was able to learn about the royal family's injustice. Ms. explains that back then she wanted to flee the country as quickly as possible. The girl asks what? The girl asks how she knows about the royal family's crimes. He asks if she's investigated them, explaining that she's always been alone and never inquired about others' pasts. The girl reacts sharply and says she has a headache. He notices her heavy breathing and sweat and asks. Tweet says it's a prison and asks if it's a dream he sees something. The girl says she's trapped in a cage. Tweet explains it's not poison and asks what she sees. The girl says she wants to be free. He says to be free, and the girl reacts with bewilderment. Then he runs up to the girl, who falls to the floor. The top right panel announces that it's the next day. In the top left panel, a man asks if everything is really okay, to which Tweet replies that it is. The girl explains that her head no longer hurts and she's completely healthy. The man explains that about half a day has passed and asks if Tweet is okay. He says that's enough. He asks in what sense. The guy silently looks forward. Tweet informs Mise that Chris has contacted him and the escort mission is complete. Everything is as she heard, and Mise has nothing to worry about. Mise agrees and asks to come to the academy early to talk to Tweet. The girl replies that she's not worried but is interested. The guy suggests going to the royal castle, asking if it's a castle. The girl explains it's an order from Chris. The man says he received another contact and apologizes for the mistake. Tweet says he wants to ask, but it's best to ask Chris later, and suggests the girl might not be at fault. Tweet then asks if she's at fault. The girl confirms she filed a report on Misa's escort. She explains that the escort order was revoked because times have changed. He explains that the mission was initially strange and there was almost no information, and that the information Oz received shouldn't have been much different from his. He explains that perhaps the soldiers shouldn't know much, as the mission involved enough aristocrats and royalty that everything that happened there shouldn't concern them. A tweet asks the other player how they feel when a comrade dies and asks for an answer, noting that it's quite sudden. The other player reports having a bad feeling about Mission 28. The tweet remains silent. He says it's understandable, and he thinks there's nothing he can do about it. He explains that it's because they do this kind of work. He asks them to wait and says he'll try to be brief. He turns to Chris and says she wasn't in a hurry and apologizes for not. Tweed tells the king that the request is for a unique magic that has been passed down through generations in the royal family, calling it the Path of Wisdom. The king clarifies that the client is Misa's father and asks what the Path of Wisdom is. Tweed explains that, according to his greatness, Princess Mishirtsaze is the bearer of the Path of Wisdom. If the bearer of this magic gives birth to a daughter, she inherits this magic. If the bearer dies, it passes to the closest blood relative without being able to pass it on. The woman explains that this magic is the inheritance of memory. The girl reports that the Road of Wisdom allows one to inherit the memories of previous hosts. The tweet explains that everything is now clear to him, as he felt a strange sense of déjà vu, her knowledge of the ancient golem, her knowledge of the layout of the tomb of the jailer dungeon, and the injustice of the queens. The woman explains that inherited memory depends on Tweet's strength, and if memory is inherited, new knowledge and insight into new technologies are passed on along with it. She explains that until now, the Arcadia family has maximized the power of the Road of Wisdom and has continually increased its authority, but this time, a tweet announces that a third civil war for the throne will soon break out in Arcadia. The man explains that the current king foresaw this situation and allowed the princess to escape the kingdom. He also reveals that the second prince is eager to overthrow the current heir to the throne, the first prince. He reports that everything was done to keep people from finding out about it. He then explains that the second prince immediately dispatched assassins, after which His Majesty learned of it and sent a request to the organization to protect the princess. The woman explains that this is all that has happened up to today, he confirms. The tweet states that it's still dangerous to leave Mise unattended. The woman explains that they think the second prince will abandon Mise just because the mercenaries were destroyed, and asks if they found out yet who's trying to rebel against the king. The girl replies no, and asks if. He asks where Mise is now. The woman tells Chris, and he expresses surprise. Tweet informs her that she must detain Tweet. She explains that eliminating the mercenaries won't stop the second prince, and that the turmoil hasn't subsided since the war ended. Tweet explains that the kingdom of Arcadia also suffered greatly during the War of Heroes. The man states that if war breaks out, he explains that this is politics and has nothing to do with emotions, and explains that this is the essence of aristocracy. The man asks if a father is really capable of sending assassins for his own daughter. The woman asks if Alicia-san did the same thing. The boy storms out of the room, breaking. Tweet says he's found Mise and asks where she is. Tweet yells at Mise to duck. Mise responds to the warning and dodges the attacker's blow. Mise asks Tweet if he's safe, and Tweet tells him her name. He says he'll be brief. He explains that power is the path of wisdom, and that his memory stores other people's memories, causing a constant sense of déjà vu. Mise tells her father that this power is within her and asks Tweet if he's on her side. The woman reports that they couldn't find them, and the man remains silent. The woman explains that half their army needs to be mobilized. Tweet says that 28 couldn't have gotten far and orders them to work together to protect each other. The man confirms. The woman says that 28 has already escaped and that it's none of his business. He reports to O2. He says she didn't expect 28 to behave like this. He explains how he could so easily disobey orders and claims this is definitely not the 28 she knows. The man says there's nothing he can do. The tweet says he'll make 28 regret it. The man explains that it's a port city in the southeast of the kingdom of Terraria. The guy explains that several days have passed since he decided to run away with Muse, and they've already arrived here. He explains that they escaped from the royal capital and somehow managed to hide from the organization. He explains that everything has been fine so far, probably because he worked for Chris for many years. The girl asks why they don't return to the kingdom of Arcadia. He asks Mise to allow him to. The tweet reveals that Mise possesses the mysterious power, Road of Wisdom, which is passed down through the female line of the royal family from generation to generation, and allows one to inherit the memories of previous bearers. The royal family used this power to increase their influence. The girl explains that the kingdom of Arcadia saw her as a valuable asset. He says the king allowed this escape to give Misa freedom, but it could spark a civil war over the succession. He says it's a bit of a shame. The girl explains that they never got to say goodbye to Alicia and Glenn. The inserts reveal that Misa wants. Tweet reports that after arriving at the port, he wanted to cross the sea by ship, but port security was tightened because of a newspaper distributed 2 days ago. Tweet explains that this is a blatant lie, designed to keep them in this country. Muse tells Tweet the girl is surprised that the criminals are stowaways. The girl says it's the same. He says they need to cross the border of the kingdom of Arcadia. He notices that it looks like they're surrounded. He asks Mise to hide somewhere and says he no longer needs to hide from her. The girl confirms that she understands. He tells Mise. The tweet states that their target is still the girl, and if they hand her over, they won't touch her. The woman orders them to get out. The hooded man counts to 28. He says that then they have nothing to talk about. The man says that he is a former member of the organization and warns them to be careful, after which he receives a blow and makes a sound of pain. The tweet suggests that maybe it's time to think about yourself. The man shouts that he's alone and okay and warns people to stay away. He announces that this is a fixation, at which time he strikes with his sword and captures the enemy. The girl asks what's going on and explains what it is. She notes how serious Tweet is as she speaks. Tweet explains that they need to leave one alive and use him to convey a message to the organization that negotiations will be conducted through him, and also says that the chase will begin soon and they need to leave quickly. The girl says that to truly become free, something will have to be sacrificed. He tells her. The man turns to the captain and asks how he plans to answer for this. The woman says she was meant to see this. The text says, "This is the imperial castle of the kingdom of Terraria." The man reports that Princess Misheriaze has escaped, and this is the worst-case scenario, which could lead to an international problem. The woman says that the dogs are disobedient and need to be killed immediately, and asks if it's premature to kill them. 28. The man explains that. The tweet says that even if you double the number of people, there probably won't be enough. The man says that it's true now. The tweet says they're fighting the boy who killed the Demon King. He says, "Monster." The man with blood on his face says, "Chew." Then he screams, "Gah." Tweet informs Mizang that they found a carriage along the way and began their journey overland, then suggests they take a break in that village. Tweet explains that food and medicine can be purchased tomorrow by noon, while he bought the medicines that were in the store. He says they'll leave tomorrow at noon and that food can be found in the forest, but they need medicine. The girl says she should learn healing magic, and he says he should too. The girl agrees they should rest at the inn. The old man asks if they need a room. Tweet says he saw memories from the Road of Wisdom appear in his head and explains that this power arose during the Second Demon War to aid the hero. The girl confirms she had a dream. Tweet explains that this power wasn't used during the Fourth War because door. He says the sadness and suffering of his previous owners constantly replay in his head. He explains that even with his eyes closed, he constantly hears these voices. The girl repeats that she wants to be free. The tweet states that the Road of Wisdom does not transmit the host's personality due to inherited memories. The girl explains that after learning the true nature of the ability, she began to question whether she truly seeks freedom of her own free will, and explains that the reason she became an adventurer may be related to. He says that he knows that Mise studied very hard to become an adventurer, and that even when they received a request to pacify monsters, Mise actually had fun. At least those feelings belonged to no one else. He asks Mise how she. The tweet explains that while exploring the maze, the girl sensed danger, and her previous owners might have stopped there, but she didn't give up and continued her quest for adventure. She says she can't forget her old feelings, can't be satisfied, and can't continue like this. He says it was Mise's will, and there's no doubt about it. Mai says she'll get a good night's sleep tonight. Mise explains that she's already had the experience of suddenly setting off on a trip. He asks if Mise feels uneasy. The girl asks Tveit to tell her how he's been living his life up until now. Tveit says he was a so-called abandoned child, abandoned in an orphanage and then taken in by soldiers from the kingdom of Terraria. The man tells her this, but the girl remains silent. The tweet speaks to Muse. Muse explains that there's no need to pretend everything is fine. He says goodnight, and the girl agrees. He repeats goodnight, the man calls out to Mise, and the girl suddenly wakes up and screams for Mise to wake up. The girl asks if it will be safe if they get to Carnaboon. Tweet replies that, of course. The girl asks if Tweet will stay with her forever, to which he confirms. She says that if she wants to escape from there, Tweet will follow her. The girl asks even if they. The hooded guy screams in pain. He throws a punch and says everything is fine. The girl asks Tweet if he's hurt. He replies that everything is fine. The girl says it's not over yet and suggests they go. The guy turns to Tweet. The girl says they've been walking for quite a while and asks where they're going. The tweet says they've already crossed the border. The tweet explains they're in the heart of the kingdom of Arcadia. The girl says she didn't even notice. The tweet explains that the border guards were much lighter than expected. He tells her there's a village there. He explains that they only had 4 hours rest and can't linger too long. The girl asks Mise if she can walk, to which Mise replies that she can run just a little. The tweet states that there's only one guard and that it won't be difficult to deal with him and take the horse. He explains that he doesn't want to harm a regular person, but in this situation there's no other choice and suggests stealing the stable. The girl asks what he said. The tweet asks her to stop. He says the situation is hopeless and he's ready to give up and hurt other people. The girl says this is their everyday life now. He confirms this and calls himself a common bandit. The girl explains that they need money to get a carriage, and he reacts to. 2 men say that monster hunting is paying well these days and offer to take on more quests. Tweet asks if they're taking more quests. The woman addresses Tweet by name and says they're the same people. Tweet confirms. The woman welcomes the adventurers back. The girl asks how Tweet's exam went. He explains that he's a new adventurer, didn't change clothes, and the eye patch was meant to help with disguise. He reports that, as an exception, he was immediately promoted to a higher rank, so he can start working, and immediately received a request to complete a high-ranking mission. Tweet says they're heading south of the village near the dungeon entrance and apologizes for not being able to explore it. The girl understands and asks if Tweet can use ancient magic. Tweet explains that he knows several spells thanks to the Road of the Sage. He says he doesn't have any ancient magic, and the girl explains that using it drains him, so it will be hard to use now. He says it turned out well, and the girl asks if he thinks so, adding that Master Sylphia would have appreciated it. The girl explains that if Tweet tells Misa that she doesn't know his true method of fighting. Misa asks if it's his true method. Tweet shows his hand and explains that he's just a burden to her, but denies saying he said anything like that. Misa is surprised and asks what that is. He says it's his weapon. He says they'll be able to see the ogres from here. He explains that when he said the girl shouldn't do anything, he didn't mean she was in his way, but that she really didn't need to do anything. The tweet announces the task is complete. The girl, surprised, says something unexpected is happening. He offers to collect the horns to confirm the completion. The girl is surprised and asks why. He explains that this type of monster is very easy to kill by hitting the head or heart, and it's quite simple. He explains that his sniper class is perfect for such things. The girl says that she thinks Tweet asks the girl if she wants to try it, addressing her by name. The girl says she's sure. She explains that the sniper class is based on magical control, which can be trained. Tweet explains that magical control is a skill, unlike magical power and casting speed, and that it's more important. He informs her that, thanks to the path of the sage and the skill of alchemy, the girl's magical control is at a very high level. So, with such power, mastering this class will not be difficult for her. He explains that this time, he will lend her his sniper wand and asks her to fill it with magical energy when she puts it on. The girl says the weapon is called a black Roro and asks him to repeat it. Tweet says that's incorrect. He didn't name the weapon that. The girl explains that she can't remember any other name, and Tweet says the girl gave her weapon a good name. He says there's no problem with that and explains to Ms. that both eyes should be open when aiming. Ms. confirms and agrees. He suggests further, and Ms., with some trepidation, agrees to try aiming at that tree. The tweet explains that shooting should be done between heartbeats when the body is at rest and orders the shooter to fire. The gunshot is then shown. The girl is silent, looking through the scope. She reports that she missed the target. He says that's always the case at first and suggests checking the aim and practicing a little more. The girl agrees. Tweet says he'll be shooting ogres and explains that the quest requires killing 3 ogres, but there's still 1 more to go. Tweet says that even though they've got everything they need to complete the quest, they still need to get rid of the last ogre. The girl says she wants to leave this ogre to Tweet. The girl confirms. He says the words, negative, then says, stopped. The man explains rage and enhanced vision. The man abruptly throws the weapon forward. The Tweet says to make sure he's dead, and if unsure, to fire another shot to the head. The girl says she hit him. The Tweet confirms her words. The girl fires the rifle, hitting the target. He says he'll ask Mise for help. Mise says it's okay, she hit the nail on the head. He explains she did better than he expected. Mise says he'll give it his all. He confirms this. Mise asks for praise. He notices. Tweet says he'll handle them himself. Mise says he doesn't want Tweet to try alone and asks if she should shoot. Tweet explains there's no need to pull the trigger. Mise thinks that sometimes. He says that now is exactly that moment. The girl understands. He explains that he can easily deal with them, but who knows what lies ahead. The top right says this is the Roots of the Sacred Tree dungeon. The bottom right says there are many plants here that are rarely found outside. Tweet suggests collecting what's useful. Mise remains silent, and Tweet asks if something's wrong. Mise asks what he means by that. He explains that they can gather medicinal herbs, some green moss, and purple flowers. Mise understands. She asks if he plans to use it and for what. He says he's not sure he can, so it's just for insurance. The girl asks Tweet if he has a plan. Tweet explains that there are different methods to overcome the dungeon, but this time he's going to use the one he learned while working, and explains that, with it, the medicinal herbs they collected will instantly come into play. He explains that it's a sleeping gas made from medicinal herbs he obtained earlier, and asks Mise to make masks using alchemy. Mise agrees. He says it's time to leave, and Mise replies, okay. Tweet informs him that the path is blocked by huge demonic creatures that are in the way, so he will kill them. The girl remarks on how cruel this is. Tweet asks Mise if she has any memories of the path of wisdom ahead of them. Mise replies that no, almost none. She explains that she remembers. He explains that more than an hour has passed since they began exploring the dungeon, and if the enemy searches it, they must remain here for another hour or so. He says, let's go even deeper, and the girl agrees. He notices a stone memorial. The tweet states that only experts can decipher the inscriptions, but they are usually warnings of danger, and those who know this would turn back if they saw the sign. The girl says she can read it and begins reading the inscription, claiming treasure is hidden ahead. The tweet asks what it says. The girl says that's what it says, and she's afraid it's too simple, but he confirms that it's true. He says their enemies are unlikely to go any further, and the girl says that since the stone monument doesn't indicate danger, let's continue. He senses a strange presence ahead. Tweet explains that it resembles the golems at the Adventurers Guild exam, and Mise says it's floating. Tweet warns Mise to step back. Tweet quickly defends Mise from the golem's attack, dodging and parrying the blow. Mise is surprised by what's happening. He explains that the golem's field of vision is wider than a human's. He hits the golem, but it remains unharmed. He explains that the golem might be protecting something and wonders if it just wants them to move on. He says that's not an answer. The girl asks T. Tweet strikes the robot, destroying its head. Tweet screams at Mise. The sounds of destruction and cracking accompany the action. He reveals that the same man created this golem. He explains that the path of wisdom is magic created before World War II between demons and heroes. He reveals that Mise's head contains 200 years of knowledge. He says that in fact, when they were passing, the tweet says they will, and the girl says it looks like they can go further. The girl explains that it's the sacred herb of Exa. The tweet confirms that this is true, and the girl asks if it is true. The tweet replies yes. The text explains that the sacred herb of Exa is essential in creating B. He reports that the divine medicinal elixir is a high-grade potion with a high level of potency, but in recent years there has been a shortage of the main component, the divine herb Exa, so elixirs have only been created a few times. He explains that it is a valuable medicinal herb. He says that. The tweet explains that Exa is an extremely hard-to-find herb, and even selling a small amount can bring in a lot of money. He explains that even if transportation is impossible, they can still take advantage of the fact that simply knowing that Exa grows here is extremely valuable. The tweet suggests stopping here today and the girl. He says they need to buy what they need and leave. He asks Mise which of these things she wants. Mise denies it and says she doesn't want anything. He asks if she wants anything. Mise is surprised and thinks that when she's asked such questions, she always shows. The woman says she doesn't want anything, explaining that the reward this time consists of a sufficient amount of money. The tweet states that Mise also helped, and they can afford to spend. The text reports that Mise described their escape as routine. He asks the girl if she is sure of her choice and says that some more intricate decoration would be better. The girl says that she likes it. He explains that in the end. Tweet says, "Look," and the girl says it suits her. Tweet explains to the seller that they want this bracelet. The seller says that as long as the person likes it, it's fine, and warns travelers to be careful if they're heading to the western wasteland. Tweet and the girl confirm. He reports that the guy he heard it from saw it from afar and doesn't know what exactly happened, and thanks her for the information. He asks where they'll go next, and the girl replies that the distance is too great to go straight to the Republic of Carnabon. He suggests going through the cliff in the middle, and the woman says that being in an unfamiliar village, earning money for the Commission Guild, then being in a dungeon and exploring new lands is just like an adventure. She says she's found what she always wanted to find after losing her everyday life. The tweet states that a whistling sound is heard in the background of the landscape. Then a flying stone is shown, which falls and creates a huge crater in the ground. He reports that these are monstrous footprints. The tweet says it's kind of weird, and maybe the girl thinks the same thing. The girl says they should have seen the cliff by now. He reports that 2 hours have passed since they left the village, and all he sees is a wasteland, which seems strange. He explains that he thought they could use the cliff as a hiding place, but now they need to reach the Republic, which is further west of the kingdom. The girl. The girl says it might be a mistake in the map. Tweet says the map he got from the guild was the latest edition and shouldn't have any mistakes. Tweet rides his horse and notices something, then says what it is and what it is. He says it's like the earth was scooped out with a giant spoon. The girl asks, "Ha!" He explains that the entire area was changed in just one night. The girl repeats, "Ha!" He just asks not to call it extremism. The tweet reports that 2 guys said they saw something strange, and they said there was a strange object hovering in the sky. The tweet explains to Chris that even though they're only facing 2 people, he's still integrating Terra Kingdom weapons. He explains that magic has enough firepower to change terrain, but it can't kill people directly, so the use of extremism was necessary to deprive them of advantageous terrain. He reveals that the operation to assassinate Mise was a joint effort, and most likely the Terra Kingdom received permission. The tweet states that this is a decisive moment, simultaneously aiming at the target through the rifle scope and preparing to fire. He says that extremism feels like doing his job properly. The woman explains that he should be working at his desk and asks why he even went on this trip. The woman asks if he's worried about 28 and says that this child, like him, has a good head on his shoulders. The woman says that if they continue to quarrel, they won't be able to carry out the operation properly and tells them not to worry. The tweet explains that exchanges of this level are commonplace. The man from the Kingdom of Arcadia apologizes for his rudeness and says he now understands that this is a way to raise morale. He says that, didn't they say that their opponent was the strongest representative in the Royal Counterintelligence Bureau of their organization, and that he is sure that they asked for support to defeat him and bring back Her Highness? He reports that after all, he is one of the 3 most powerful people in the kingdom. The man apologizes and says that if Tweet was the only one called to defeat someone, then the question arises whether that someone is truly the strongest. Tweet explains that he may be the strongest, but he's not universally strong, and names the number 28. The man expresses surprise. He explains that the 28's value lies in assassinations and ambushes, and that he will prove superior in face-to-face combat. He explains that his specialty is assault, including kidnapping, espionage, escort, torture, and assault. The man explains that he doesn't specialize in assassinations and ambushes. The tweet explains that, thanks to the knight from the Arcadia Kingdom and O2's abilities, if they go into close combat, 28 won't be able to use the sniper rod, and O2 will be able to get close to 28 for one interval, after which they can deal with it at the cost of his life. The guy asks where Mise is, and he replies that she's in the carriage behind him. The man explains that he was able to go on the trip thanks to Tweet, and he calls the man lucky. The man asks if Tweet is okay, and the girl greets the man. The man confirms, and the girl nods and says, the tweet states that he's not very good at containing himself, and adds that 28 knows about it. The tweet says the dog can't be too far away. The tweet explains that it's obvious. The tweet says the dog lied. The girl says that if the guy dies, he shouldn't blame her, and asks if they have an agreement. He says that the feeling is mutual. The tweet states that he won't kill the enemy with this P-gun, and suggests using a P-bomb instead. The guy laughs and says he won't kill him. The tweet fires the P-gun, and the guy dodges and jumps to the side. He tells her that if she's in the air, she can't escape it, and explains that it won't work. The girl warns of the danger and screams in pain. He says that he already told her it wouldn't work. Tweet reports that O2 is a professional, as he thought, and it has a weak point. He explains that TLO2's power is immense, so much so that if the shots land in close proximity to the caster will suffer from the impact. Tweet explains that as long as he's close enough, he strikes him with his sword. The girl says she's already taken measures to resist. She warns that if 28 tries to escape, it will be useless. 28 screams in pain as he receives the blow. The girl reacts with surprise and pain. Tweet announces that this is his line. Tweet throws something at the other guy. The guy with short blonde hair says it's too slow and calls Tweet a naive 28. The guy with short blonde hair makes a noise of displeasure, and the guy with short blonde hair. He says okay and strikes, causing an explosion. He then notices the traps in the way and mentions them. The guy confirms this, responding, He explains that she momentarily increased her rage production to protect her body. The tweet shows a girl raising her hands and announcing the name of the move, Meteor Cannon. Meteors are then shown flying from her hands, followed by a powerful explosion. He explains that these are flashes of condensed magical power, and that it means he's delaying synchronization. He screams from the impact. He reports that he's become weaker and counts to 28. The girl asks if she destroyed all the traps with this. The tweet states that he hasn't revealed all his cards yet and shows a stone, explaining that it's just an ordinary rock. The guy asks what it is and assumes it's a rock. The tweet confirms and explains that it was a bomb trap, magic, the guy knows well. He says it's funny. The guy explains that if the tweet's sync had been out of sync for even a second, he would have blown himself up. The guy explains that the bomb trap was originally a magic trick of placing a bomb in a fixed point that would explode upon external impact, and then hitting it with a normal blow. Tweet says he doesn't think he can, explaining that every shot the girl makes is a barrage with the potential to turn the tide, so he has no choice but to gamble everything on one move. Tweet explains that while he continued to hone his assassination and ambush techniques, the girl continued to. He says oog and egg when he gets hit. He says that his leg is broken. He screams that his leg is broken. Tweet says he takes back his statement about the man's skills deteriorating and thanks him. Tweet then explains he's not good at interrogations and asks him to answer once where Mizi is, adding that it's a coincidence. The man asks where Mizi is. He says he shouldn't say that and says the girl will find out very soon. The girl asks what. He explains that this bracelet is 28. The tweet says it's fake and can't be otherwise. The girl is aiming a rifle. He explains that after they swap bracelets, the girl should be ready to fire at any moment and lure O2 into her line of fire by pointing to a small rock and asking him to make sure the line of fire is aimed at her. The girl asks if it wouldn't be faster to make a bracelet with. The tweet says that between heartbeats and at the moment when the body is at its calmest, it is necessary. He begins to talk about himself. The girl says trigger, and in the text box, she says she's doing everything in her power. He looks at the girl in surprise, and she aims and fires the gun. The tweet announces the chapter title and episode number. The man explains that the organization has been dismantled and that he will now lead a normal life. The girl says that if she misses, it will mean that she will not be able to shoot anymore. The tweet states that the enemy isn't dead yet, then goes silent. The man falls to the ground. The girl notices and approaches the spot where he fell. He says he doesn't feel guilty about what he did. He notices the fallen man and addresses him by his name, Chris, asking how long he planned to continue this and whether he realizes he's cornered who he is. The girl explains that the path of wisdom is powerful magic, and there's not a single country in the world where Her Highness would be treated like an ordinary person. Tweet says that even if you manage to successfully escape to the Republic, you won't have a lifetime of peace. He asks how. He says he understands and already understood this. The man calls out to Tweet. He tells Chris that she's right and that they're cornered. The girl turns to Tweet and explains that Utsan's friends are probably nearby and will provide her with first aid. Tweet reports that after the battle with Oz, Mize and he were close to reaching their physical limits. Tweet explains that the carriage was destroyed and the food and medicine it contained were also destroyed. Tweet says that even so, they will continue forward. Tweet says, "Let's go." He reports that several days have passed since the battle with Oz, and they continued to move through the endless wastelands that seem to stretch endlessly beyond the horizon. He notices the corpse of an animal, explains that it is too decomposed to eat, with maggots already crawling on it, and says he will simply fry them. The girl says she doesn't want to be the only one who finds it so easy. Tweet asks how long they can continue living like this. The girl says she doesn't regret anything, because if she hadn't left the kingdom with Mize back then, she would have been killed now. Tweet explains that running, he says it's too much. The girl says that even if there was no hope at all, they could only run. He calls the girl Mise and tells her, and she calls him Onsan. The girl suggests running further, to a place of freedom and peace, and even further. Tweet says they're together and says it doesn't matter where, they'll just go together. The girl explains she's reached her limits. Tweet hugs the girl. The boy surrenders and asks to be taken to his king. The man asks what the boy's business is and calls him a bastard. The man says the boy is from the army of the kingdom of Arcadia and asks him to wait, not believing he is the wanted man. The Tweet demands the lights be turned off and asks where Her Highness is. The man asks for the king. The Tweet states, "This is your king." Two guards threaten Tweet, saying he will remain here until he dies, and scold him for looking down on them. A man in royal robes addresses someone, calling him Your Majesty, and says he simply wanted to see with his own eyes who disturbed him. The man confirms that he is the creature's father. He explains that he once hoped she would become a means of prosperity for the country, but now she is merely gunpowder for war. He explains that he never saw her as a daughter and calls her a creature. Tweet says he wants to negotiate. The man says, "Uh-oh," and laughs. Another man says they'll also agree with the intelligence service in the Kingdom of Terra and asks if the creature they abandoned after a tense battle just to get here is still alive. Two knights explain that. He says what he sees. Then he abruptly throws the chain, and the man looks at it in surprise. The man reports that he is currently imprisoned, but no one can find Her Royal Majesty Mikelise, and His Royal Majesty is also currently there, along with the 28 and those gathered in the dungeon. The Tweet says he understands and that for now he needs to meet with the 28, then expresses. The man informs them that they are ultimately unable to provide guardianship for Her Royal Majesty, the princess from the prince's second faction, and that in order to keep everything under control, His Royal Majesty will personally meet with her. The girl says, "Don't tell her, His Royal Majesty is meeting with her personally on the 28th. Tweet and the girl are running, Tweet shouting for them to come here. The girl says Chris is a little late. The man in the cassock addresses Tweet, calling him Your Majesty, and asks if it's Chris. Tweet says the number 28. He tells Mr. Retin Arcady that he wants to negotiate with him for Mize's freedom. Tweet says he's now convinced there's no freedom to be found on the run. He says that after rescuing Alicia, he realized that everyday life is a place he wants to return to, and he wonders if it's worth returning to that situation. He says that freedom is meaningless unless it is won openly. He tells Mize to wait here for a while. Mize asks where he is going. He replies that they left friends, shot a friend, neither of them dreamed of days like. The man counts to 3 and says there's no room for bargaining here. The Tweet says the man seems to want her to live, but even if she were still alive, as long as time continues to pass, she could die on her own. He tells her not to move. The woman explains that even if she's no longer his dog, the Bureau would still be inappropriate if it killed the king of another country. He reveals that she's a former dog. The woman explains that the dog bit the hand that fed her, and so that's what it means. The Tweet states that he will reveal the location of the sacred herb of Exa. The man and woman respond in amazement, exclaiming, he respectfully states that he wishes to express his opinion and explains that this treaty will balance the value of life and the kingdom. The man, in a panic, says that he doesn't understand what is meant and doesn't believe such an impossible story, and then screams nonsense and experiences pain while saying that the man. The boy asks what the man means. The man shouts at them not to make fun of him and asks if that means he'll die. The girl explains that even if the contracts are broken, the sacred Exu herb can still be obtained, as well as the corpse of Her Majesty. She says that if Tweet says he has 1 minute. The man asks for a little time to discuss it with his men, then reveals he didn't tell Tweet about it because he planned to finalize the deal in a couple of minutes. Tweet expresses surprise. The old man announces that he understands. He tells the old man to speak louder so everyone can hear. The old man shouts that he understands and declares the agreement complete. The tweet tells Chris to sign the contract downstairs as a witness and asks to be escorted into the building. Chris understands. He says Chris seriously threatened the king of another country and did it, and Chris says Tweet has no limits to his recklessness. Tweet says it's been a bit of a stretch, as expected, and asks her to lend him a shoulder for a bit. The girl asks what and tells him to start by saying something. Tweet explains that it would be nice to leave her right there, and the girl says he won't do that. He explains that the details of the treaty must be perfect for the Bureau and asks if the other party has noticed that the Kingdom of Terra has received the Road of Wisdom. He explains that because of the treaty, Mise will now have to continue living in the Kingdom of Terra, adding that this would be an exaggeration. The woman informs him that if Tweet allows Her Majesty to be used in politics, the Royal Bureau of Counterintelligence will provide her with an escort and asks his opinion. Tweet says no, he will protect Mise. Tweet then leaves, explaining that he wants to confirm something, and the woman asks him. A young man screams in despair. A man says it's impossible. Another man explains that he finds it hard to believe in the divine herb Exa, addressing the seated man as Your Majesty. The tweet states that the path of wisdom makes sense if they found the herb with it, and its power is different from what he imagined, as he thought. The man explains that they can't just let this go. After the bombs were removed, 28 people were killed in the area containing the herb. He explains that. He says not to be afraid. The man explains that, firstly, he was in front of him, he pretended to try to catch them off guard, but he won't be able to as long as they remain vigilant. The man says that he won't be able to. Tweet says she's alive. He explains that while she used to be a fragile little princess, she's now brave enough to sleep soundly in the middle of the wasteland. Tweet says she tried to follow him and calls her Mise. The girl calls Tevayet-san, and Tevayet says they're going home. The text says that a few days later, they're in the capital of the Kingdom of Terra. Against the backdrop of the Buildars Academy, Tweet and the girl are talking. The girl says they haven't been here in a while. Tweet confirms this and says the root of the problem still hasn't been solved. The girl agrees with Tweet and explains that, after all, the path of wisdom hasn't disappeared yet. The girl says that if Tevayet ever gets to that point, they could just have a baby. Tevayet says that's true. The girl says that if a colorblind person is born, there's a high probability they'll inherit the path of wisdom, and this time they won't hold it back, as Tweet's father did, so when the time comes, the whole family should set out on the journey. Tweet says he doesn't necessarily have to be that person. He says it might be, but then tells the girl there's nothing to worry about. The girl reacts sharply, and the man and girl behind her shout at the two of them. The man and girl's names are Alicia and Glenn. Alicia and Glenn ask where the girl went, and Glenn says she just disappeared. The girl apologizes. Tweet says he's sure he wrote the letter correctly. Alicia is indignant that this is all, and says she never. He says that this country has no hope left, and one day they will have to be conquered by either the Kingdom of Terra or the Kingdom of Lucia. The man reports that this is a terrible state of affairs, and a memory that is still alive. He remains silent. Tweet says he thinks the Kingdom of Terra is better. The man asks why. Tweet explains that after the war between the heroes and demons, they immediately helped rebuild. The man remains silent. He explains that in the near future their country will be annexed, either by the kingdom or the empire. He then says that in that case they must accurately assess their true state of affairs. The man says that he will then go to the Kingdom of Terra. He responds with a question. The man says that he will not ask Tweet for anything difficult. He will entrust Tweet with the future of their country, the future of the Kingdom of Valabar in the Kingdom of Terra. And if by the next time they meet, Tweet seems to be the one who lives happily. He says he'll leave it up to Gran. The girl talks about the Magic Games Festival and wishes everyone a pleasant time. Tweet asks if he knows about the Magic Games Festival. The girl explains that it's a school event held twice a year for the high school department and takes place at Buildar's Academy. She explains that the main goal of the festival is to allow students to compete against each other using magical techniques, and that the battles. He says that from what he's heard, the students' main motivation for participating is to demonstrate their abilities to the outside world. The man reports that the heroic core students are especially motivated. The girl explains that last year's Magic Games Festival was cancelled due to the great war between heroes and demons. The tweet says it coincides with the start of the conference in Wizectus and also the second day of the festival. The girl reports that the heads of the Kingdom of Terra and the Kingdom of Valabar will attend the conference, and they will discuss several diplomatic matters in the city of Wizectus, which is located in Terra. The tweet says, Gran. The woman informs him that the team's assignments are to be announced during lunch break, and since he will be meeting his team members after class, she asks him to follow the instructions of the student council staff who will be their leaders. The woman says they've been divided up quite well. The man confirms this, silently. The tweet says it's as expected from such a wild one, though he's looking forward to it. The man explains that they say past kings kept a hawk and a lion, and they'll show that they rule heaven and earth or something like that. The girl asks, anyway, why the names? He explains that he did some research on the kingdom of Terra before joining the academy. The man asks if Gran is from another country, and he explains that he did some research. The woman tells Tweet that she hasn't fought him since the entrance exams. The man informs her that the next lesson is coming up soon and offers. Tweet says he hasn't even decided which game he'll be playing, so they might not be fighting each other. The girl asks if that wouldn't be boring. The girl with long hair asks Tweet what game he'll be playing, but he declines. The girl with long hair asks if he'll kill. Alicia says that above all, she lacks self-confidence and wonders if she really deserves to be chosen. He says he's not sure what made her think that way, but notes that Alicia has made a name for herself here because of her abilities and should hold her head up high. The girl says she didn't leave everything to Tweet during the incident with Robert. Tweet says he doesn't understand what she's talking about. The girl asks how that could happen. The girl says she feels like beating Tweet would boost her confidence, and he says that would be unpleasant. Then the girl demands that he promise her one thing, explaining that they won't name the games they'll be playing, but if they do come face to face. The tweet says she'll try, noting that Alicia is serious about it. Mira Opstein then reveals that she's the designated leader of the first-year Hawk students, a student, and a council member, and her name is Mira Opstein. She explains that the plan for today is 2. The woman says they need to consider who will participate in each game. The papers list the stats, and there are also games that the participants have the potential to play. He explains that they have 3 days, including today, to try these games out for themselves, after which they will determine who will participate in which. The girl asks TV. The tweet explains that, based on the sound, a physical race is more like a walking race, and asks what about Mize. Mize says she hasn't heard of any of the races mentioned, and neither has he. The girl mentions a shooting star and an outcome. She says that's why it's so turbulent. He informs that the heroic course differs from the regular one in the direction they will be moving in, and therefore there will be differences between the courses. He explains that in addition to the Magic Games Festival, which is a traditional event at this academy, so instead of the general course approved this year, it would be natural if... The girl advises that, in this case, she should be consulted. She explains that teamwork is essential for winning the festival. The tweet suggests caution, lest one become a burden, and warns that criticism could disrupt teamwork. The man reacts with difficulty. He announces that the games that will be held on the opening day are the physical race, the sledgehammer, and the shooting star. He explains that the first was the physical race, which the indicators said he had an aptitude for. He explains that the second was the sledgehammer, which turned out to be a teen game where each team had to. The tweet explains that since he lent her the EP-28 during their escape last month, Mies has improved her long-range shooting skills and has been working hard since they returned. The girl shouts out what she said many times after class today and asks. The girl yells at Tweet not to hang up. He remains silent, watching the girl, who is shaking and nervous. The girl turns and apologizes for her rudeness, explaining that she showed her ugly side. He says that the student council has its own work to do. Tweet asks the girl if he saw a shooting star. The girl apologizes and says she was a little distracted. Tweet says this isn't a real race yet, and during the actual race, he'll run like a regular student. The girl says that in the past, when completing a physical race, Tweet could have run even faster. He asks, what about Team Live? To which the guy replies that it's almost the same thing, and explains that right now they're just following the student council's guidelines, so they're doing just fine. The girl explains that there are a lot of aristocratic kids at the academy, so she hopes there won't be any outbursts. The tweet explains that the exchange with the student from the heroic course was part of the performance back then, and that it resembled that. The girl says she thinks it was like that time and asks what she means by like that time. The man and the girl are both surprised and say, "What, huh?" He explains that, as Alicia said earlier, there are a lot of aristocrats in the heroic year, and if they run into the student council, they'll likely start to express discontent. He says that's why they take the opportunity to warn the heroic year students in advance. He says that the student council... Tweet says he has a knack for this game too. The girl says it's not yet very popular among the general public. Tweet explains that it's similar and considers it a useful experience. The girl asks what it's like to wingboard. Tweet says it was quite interesting. The girl is interested. The girl asks if there will be anyone at the festival who will be able to see Tweet's true nature. He explains that he doesn't want to stand out too much at the festival. He says he thinks some people will be able to see. The tweet states that some outdoor training grounds were renovated to create this maze. It explains that to play the game, teams will be divided into 2, capture and escape. First, the capture team will set traps in the maze, and then the escape team will attempt to navigate it. He advises that when passing through, one should be wary of the middle of the field and be more careful immediately after turning a corner, or when the terrain changes. The girl explains that she has no experience disarming traps. He says that's true and adds that. The girl says she was planning to and thinks it would be good training since she plans to become a traveler. The tweet understands and tells her to do her best. The girl replies that she will. He says that since the festival will attract a large audience, he's decided to try to remain inconspicuous, but if things continue like this, nothing will change. He wants to try something new. He explains that training for the 5th Exodus game and the 6th Gladius game went well. The man suggests they go home. Tweet informs Ms. that he'll walk her to her dorm today. Ms. asks what's going on and says it's. He announces that during the festival, the students will be divided into 2 teams, each of which will participate in 9 games that will test everyone's abilities. He explains that since this will be the first major event since the end of the war, the scale will be appropriate. He explains that celebrities from, in the top right, a group of people are walking down the street. Tweet announces that they are participating in a physical competition, and Mies is participating in the outcome. Mira Opstein, the leader of Team Hawk, explains that almost everyone will be participating in games they have an aptitude for, and asks if anyone would like to participate. He explains that the war game takes place in a 5-on-5 battle format, with the school buildings and surrounding grounds serving as the battlefield. He explains that since there are no restrictions on the use of magic, combat is decided solely by one's own skill and experience, which is why, as a rule, only students with innate talent participate in the competition. Tweet reports that the finale of the Magic Festival is a grand spectacle. The girl explains to Zig that, given his specialization in long-range magic, Rain of Arrows is much more suited to him. The man explains that this battle is his calling card. The man asks why Tweet. The guy with glasses and the guy with short blonde hair tell Zig that he might have overdone it a bit and remind him that fighting isn't his thing, suggesting he trust them and take part in something else. Zig agrees to fight, despite the fact that there will be 2 people against him, and asks. The guy announces a fire bullet and says he's not alone, reminding the other guy that he remembers. The man summons a ground spike. Tweet says he didn't have to say anything and warns that he can't win alone with dodging. The other guy notices that Zig has something prepared. In the top right, a man announces a fire bullet. Then he mentions a wind cannon and a lightning spear, all while attacking. The man yells, "Cough," and another man says, surprised, "What?" In the bottom right, the girl and he announce that it's C-rank magic, similar to the enemy's earthen spike. The tweet states that he's using multiple activation. The girl asks what that means. The tweet explains that earlier, during a duel with him, the opponent used the magical tool Erupts for that move, but this time it's much better crafted. He is reported to have done it with his skill. He says that's enough. The girl starts to speak, but is interrupted. A woman asks Tweet to participate in a war game. Tweet raises his hand, from which light emanates. The man and woman explain that such a skill is not something you can easily acquire, and a group of people express surprise and say, "It's incredible." He says he's not the same as he used to be and has become stronger. The girl with short dark hair says, and suggests that if he's going to participate, he should join the war game. She asks what competition he should prepare for, and what about the other student council member, the girl. Tweet tells another boy that it's Wallen, another member of the student council, and warns that if he comes, he'll cause trouble again. The boy agrees that it's best not to cross paths with him. The girl asks if Wallen is stylish, and the boy explains that he fought in the Great War. Tweet reports. The girl says she started to think someone else might be the academy's strongest student. The girl with the flower in her hair says she thinks so too. The man asks what's going on with them, and the girl remains silent. In the top right, the tweet says he thought they promised not to tell each other, and the girl explains that they've already decided and asks what about the Lions team. In the top left, the girl says they haven't fully decided yet, and the guy explains that those who have they started training yet? Because. He explains that he too is a student and wants to try something new, but there's no escape from it. He now reflects on how his student life wasn't the best. The girl on the right explains that, in that case, it's most likely the result of a parade or rain of arrows, given M's character. The tweet explains that he tried to use minimal effort in fights to avoid attracting unnecessary attention and conceal his past as an agent of the Royal Secret Service, but to achieve true freedom, he must exert maximum effort. The tweet explains that to achieve this, he must challenge himself. He explains that he's too slow compared to the other students, but that doesn't mean he can't learn new things. The girl asks why he thinks that. He tells her he's bad at magic. The girl is surprised and asks what. She says she just wants him to know that O2 is always there. The woman reports that Tweet's body has become unusual due to training within the organization and explains that magical power is more effective when multiple methods are used, such as compression, multiple activation, and parallel activation. She describes Tweet's body as unusual or eccentric. Gran tells Tweet to apologize. Tweet says yes. The girl calls Tweet by name. The man calls Tweet. Tweet turns around. Gran asks Tweet if he wants to go for a walk after class to talk. Tweet agrees. He says it's okay, and the other guy apologizes for calling him when he was busy. He asks what he wanted to talk about. The guy, surprised and worried, says he couldn't take him on as his student. Tweet announces that he wants to participate in the final day of the Magic Games Festival. The man asks why Tweet wants him as his teacher. Tweet asks to be taken as an apprentice. The man calls Tweet by name and asks to be with him. Tweet is surprised and asks if he is really being taken as an apprentice. He says that to do this, he needs to displace the students from the hero course so that he can participate in the wargame. He reports that although he had problems with the hero course students, he said that he wants to displace them, despite the fact that they are on the same team, at least for the duration of the festival. Tweet asks if he can find out the reason behind this. The man informs him that Tweet knows about the conference in Luzectus and confirms this. He reports that Sophia Sensei explained to them a few days ago that the heads of the kingdoms of Terraria and Valabar will gather in the city of Luzectus for a conference coinciding with the second day of the Magic Games Festival. These discussions will possibly include the annexation of the kingdom of Valabar. The man reports that surrounding countries have also noticed. The tweet explains that this has something to do with why he's currently in the kingdom of Terraria and asks if he has a connection with the king. The man explains that King Valibara entrusted him with exploring the kingdom of Terraria. The tweet expresses interest. He explains that if this were not the case, then His Majesty would decide to be annexed by the Lucius Empire, and this is quite a bold idea. He informs that when they meet again in the near future, he will decide to annex the kingdom, and then the other guy will live happily. The other guy says. Tweet says he heard that Tweet briefly joined the war when he was a soldier during the Great War and nearly died, but His Majesty saved him. Tweet says that maybe it doesn't suit him, but His Majesty is his patron. Tweet asks when King Valabar will arrive. He tells Gran that sending him here was the right decision and explains that he wants to prove that His Majesty's decision was correct. Gran says that he doesn't really trust the Lucius Empire, but considers the kingdom of Terraria a great place to live. He says it's safe enough to pick up girls here. Top right, the tweet states he has to decline, and the man suggests a quick rematch. Center right, the tweet says it's a safe country. Top left, the man explains that even people like Green consider it safe. He feels a sense of pride. Left. He says he wants to see his interlocutor's abilities first. The guy asks him to wait and admits that he understands what's going on and that they'll have a battle. He repeats that he wants to see his abilities, and the guy replies that he shouldn't be offended if he wins. He says they'll see later. The tweet says it's rage and tells you to try it, then strikes. The tweet is surprised. He dodges a kick, then quickly ducks to avoid the next blow. He reports that the opponent's hand-to-hand combat technique is excellent, as usual, but in the end, he is not like the opponent. The opponent screams and jumps up with a shout. The tweet says that's pretty much the only thing he can do. He reports intense pressure and explains that if he loses focus, the opponent will break through his defense. He calls the opponent naive. The opponent responds by making a noise of surprise and falling backwards from Tweet's punch. Tweet explains that his ideal fighting style is to end everything with one strike. He says that when it comes to strategizing, Tweet is as bad as ever. Tweet says that one strike that is sure to defeat an enemy simply needs to be learned. Tweet asks about ending everything with one strike. He explains that under these conditions, he'll definitely win and advises increasing the number of templates. Gran says he understands and confirms that he can use fixation, but hasn't mastered it yet. He asks if fixation is a weapon creating magic and if it wouldn't be better to have a real weapon. The tweet suggests that in addition to bare-knuckle punches, it's worth trying to use the restraint to create a series of weapons. The man replies that he understands. Then the man lowers himself onto the bed with effort and says, "Damn, this is." He says that if he hadn't fled the battlefield, he would have become as strong as the other. He says that his name is Gran Iblis and that he will be in the care of the interlocutor. The text explains that the kingdom of Valabar was small. The tweet explains that although he wasn't conscripted, he decided to volunteer in response to the call because, as a man who loved the kingdom, it was natural. He says he's heading to join the troops on the northern front. The man clarifies that the fighting on the northern front isn't currently at its peak. He explains that he can use rage but has no real combat experience and asks if he didn't explain that to them. He's almost certain he'll just be carrying supplies or helping the medics due to the lack of provisions. The only thing he was given was a military uniform. He explains. The guy says that when this war is over, he'll kill those idiots from the Empire. The tweet says yes. The guy is pained and surprised, explaining that he doesn't understand how everyone could die so easily, and says it's because he's only lived a peaceful life up until now. He says that until he experiences this place for himself, everyone thinks the world around them will last forever, or at least they think it will last for the rest of their lives. He screams that he will die if this continues. The man asks what he is doing here. The tweet reports that the demon Orcus has appeared near the kingdom's borders, and your commanders were sent forward to destroy him, but they were all killed in battle, and you must avenge them. The tweet explains that the battlefield itself was truly unreasonable. Such is the order of things, the great flow that, first, on the top right, it says it's near the northern border of the kingdom of Valabar. On the bottom right, he says that whatever they're fighting against, no matter how many there are, is pointless. On the bottom left, he says with surprise what it is. Then, on the top left, another man asks. The tweet says troops on the northern front have seen countless demonic creatures, but this demon is on another level. He asks Gran's name, and he answers. He tells Gran his name, Elio, and suggests they die together. Gran screams and tries to run away, and he screams back. Tweet looks at the approaching enemy. The enemy fires an energy beam from his hand. Tweet dodges the attack, falling to the ground. He says he's dead, or more accurately, enslaved. Another guy asks, "Are you awake yet?" and calls you a demon. He explains that they say a hero from the kingdom of Terraria passed by. The other guy asks what he means, and he says, Tweet reports that while he was unconscious, he heard from the captain that the hero is supposed to use a sacred sword, which is a flashy weapon. He explains that the corpse of the demon Orcus had a small hole that cut through his forehead. Tweet asks if this hole is small. He says to go, turning to Elio, who remains silent. Elio asks, ignoring his leg, and he says that at least he's alive. He asks to just leave, to which Elio agrees. The tweet states that with the demon Orcus defeated, it will be possible to attack the troops Orcus commanded. A man says it seems not all demons are strong and suggests killing them all, while another man orders them all to be killed and shouts this. He says it sounds like something and yells, asking if he's hurt and orders him to hold on, explaining that he's here to help. The demon cries and says he doesn't want to die and asks for help. He's surprised and says that demons can talk. The man asks where the boy is going, who tells him he's the worst and how selfish he can be, and says he doesn't want to fight anymore. The boy explains that he can't, and simply can't, because they can talk and beg for their lives. Tweet is breathing heavily and laughing, and the man asks if he's okay. Tweet says he thinks he looks fine, and the man explains it was a stupid question. The woman says it's like hell itself. He says it's time to relax. He says the kingdom's time will soon become much easier. The guy asks what? He says, yeah. The tweet says AXE and reports that he was able to hold on for 5 seconds with one foot lightly leaning on it. He explains that using even D-rank magic would be a challenge if he's eccentric. The girl explains that this would certainly explain why he acts like that in class. She says she understands that and asks if he's eccentric. He replies that he's just asking. The girl asks Tweet if it's innate, to which he replies yes. The girl explains that the truth is, it's acquired through her training, but it's best to keep quiet about that. She says they're getting back to the main point. Tweet explains that it means he's come to terms with the fact. The woman says it's a truly terrifying power. He says he didn't mean it was bad, but rather amazing. The woman exclaims that yes, it is amazing. Then the woman, after thinking for a moment, says that, given what she said, there are roughly 2 methods she can teach at this point. Tweet explains that long-range D-rank support magic is suitable, but he doesn't use it often, and casts the spell, Barrier. The girl explains that Barrier is a fixed form of D-rank magic, so it's not suitable for elemental magic with unstable forms, such as Ogre. He explains that the Barrier isn't magic that protects against the enemy's magical attacks, and if he remembers correctly, it's weak to physical attacks. He says that it might be possible to compress the Barrier to the point where it becomes hard enough to protect against physical attacks. The girl says that's true, but with Tweet explains that he initially thought this magic created a defense that only worked against magic and didn't have much versatility, but if he took advantage of his body, he could make something useful out of it. The girl says she believes this magic will become a useful weapon for Tweet, and for what reason. The girl says that before explaining the second method, she wants to ask a question. He expresses confusion. The girl asks what he thinks will happen if the compression placed on the magical power is suddenly released. A tweet asks if it's a hammer. A tweet says he knows about the hammer game. A man says he did it. A man explains that when he saw it, it just clicked. A man yells, lock, and radiates energy around himself. A man makes sounds of pain and he says that for now he wants to use it as a melee weapon and will try swinging it lightly. He explains that if he swings this thing as hard as he can, it will all end in one hit. He explains that this way he now has 2 winning patterns. He says, Tweet announces that it was him. The man thinks about rage and slowly clenches his fist. Tweet punches the man. The man screams in pain and falls to the ground. Tweet apologizes, saying the punch was too hard. The man explains that Tweet really didn't use much force, but that's all it was. He says it's a secret and says he works hard, and the man asks him not to be like that. The man explains that this is their first meeting. Gregory Hausen explains that he is the freshman leader of the Lev team, and Mira Opstein says that she is the freshman leader of the Yaster team. Sharia Nolan announces that she's the student body vice president and says it's nice to meet you. The girl replies that it's nice to meet you too. A man with short dark hair asks if she's the senior vice president. The tweet explains that it's hard to get the right sense of distance with her. The woman reports that the two seem quite strong. The woman explains that, as she thought, the perception that the hero course is stronger is a bias. The girl explains that the general course was only introduced this year, so it's not surprising that there is a discrepancy between expectations and reality. The woman asks. The woman says she thinks the gap will eventually close, and Tweet says he thinks so, but then the woman explains that won't that still mean the current group of students will suffer from this bias, and Tweet remains silent. The woman says that's not at all. He says that if it's to protect what he wants to protect, he's not against fighting. The girl explains that the guys seem to have expected this situation and asks if it's difficult for Tweet to explain. He confirms that it is. The girl says it's not because the situation. Tweet explains that when he defeated the Demon King, he felt nothing. But fighting for Alicia and Ms., he felt and understood something specific. He says that now he finally has something he wants to protect, and he will fight again and again. Tweet explains that. He informs her that if a serious problem arises, the convention will likely be cancelled. He explains that this is less risky than holding the event immediately after it ends. He confirms that Chris is right. He asks what security measures are in place. The man replies that the Royal Army and several knights are responsible for this. Tweet announces that this time he'll be posing as a student. He understands that he's trustworthy. The man asks if Tweet is sure he'll be okay. Tweet replies that he understands and will be careful. The girl explains that an academy student noticed the intruders and it's only natural for the student to deal with them. He says he doesn't understand what's going on. A boy strikes 2 opponents, one of whom is surprised and asks if he's a student. The boy explains that he shouldn't look down on them and lands a powerful blow on one of the opponents, who responds with a puzzled expression. Tweet reports that he's heading straight for the warehouse. Tweet shouts Wingboard's name, noticing his escape. The man explains that at this rate, Wingboard will be able to escape. Tweet says there's nothing he can do and wonders if he should test it. He explains that the barrier was initially weak against physical impacts, as it is protective and belongs to the element of air, but he can compress it to its limit and increase its hardness. He jumps into the sky, and the man is surprised that he is in the air. Tweet says yep. Tweet kicks. Tweet stands on the ground. Tweet looks at the broken shield. He demands to know how many partners he has. The man on the ground, wounded, says he's a student and asks who he is. He explains that he's just a student. Then he considers who should leave the consequences to and takes a sharp step. The guy asks who the man is. The man, judging by the uniform, says he's a general student. The guy explains he was following uninvited guests and will be honest, as it would be unpleasant if he suspected anything. The man wonders what the guy is doing in such a place and assumes he's a freshman. The tweet says it's true. He means these guys were cornered by a guy from the regular class. The man expresses bewilderment. He stands in the middle of the room, 2 fireballs swirling around him. The guy jumps down onto the fire monster. The man laughs and says he wasn't lying. He remains silent and explains that's why the monster attacked him. The tweet states that the guy isn't at the level of a simple student. The tweet asks if he really is a student, and the guy explains that since he easily avoided it, it's quite powerful for a simple elemental cannon. The guy explains that this is just to confirm. He explains that elemental cannons like the wind cannon and fire cannon are C-rank magic, and despite their power, they should show obvious signs of activation. He reports that the man used the magic without any hints and is clearly skilled. The man says. Tweet tells him to go to sleep. He explains that these guys underestimated the academy students. Tweet tells him that if he's lucky, he's still alive. Tweet answers the question of whether he killed him. He says he's the one who cornered them and tells them the newcomers shouldn't worry about it. Valensteelen explains that this is their territory from now on and introduces himself. He asks what Valen plans to do with these two and what it means to him. Valensteelen calls it terrier. Tweet says he didn't want to cause a scene and decided to retreat because the other party was from the student council, and he thought it would be a good idea to leave the consequences to him. Tweet explains that he instructed the subordinates he sent to restore order to retreat. Tweet asks Chris something. He says that if you think about it, Alicia mentioned it before, and according to what Alicia said, there were 3 students in the academy who fought in the Great War. He says that one of them was the current student council president, another was Wallen, who he met, and the third was someone.